Chapter 1150. The lock looked like a box with 9 squares arranged on it. The 9 squares were red, yellow, and blue. They were arranged in a disorderly manner and looked quite strange. What's this? Wang Yu asked the others in confusion when he saw the strange lock. Wang Yu was a person who knew his own limits. He knew these strange things in the game, but he did not know as much as the others. Unexpectedly, the other 3 shook their heads. I'm not sure. On the other hand, Hitaki pointed to the bone platform and said, "Didn't they say it's called undead lock?" Lock. Wang Yu frowned when he heard that. Then he said a secret insight, "Go, open it." As a thief, Secret Insight definitely knew how to pick locks. Since this thing was a lock, it should be able to be opened. "I've never seen such a strange lock before." Secret Insight mumbled unwillingly. Secret Insight grumbled reluctantly. However, due to Wang Yu's tyranny, he did not dare to disobey. Hence, he had no choice but to run up to the lock and use his unlock skill. As expected, system notification, incorrect unlock method. Secret Insight spread his hands and said helplessly, "I can't open it." "Can't open it?" Wang Yu carefully observed the appearance of the undead lock again. Then he asked in confusion, "Does it have something to do with the 9 squares on the lock?" "That makes sense." Hitaki's eyes lit up when he heard Wang Yu's words. He clapped his hands and said, "I got it. It should be to arrange the colors into a sequence." "Can you do this?" Wang Yu asked. Although the 9 squares looked simple, the colors were all mixed up, just like a bunch of random numbers. It was annoying to look at. "Of course," Hitaki said proudly. "I'm an expert at puzzles." Hitaki Wu Kai walked over and slid his finger on the 9 squares of the undead lock. A notification appeared on the squares. Arrange the 3 colors according to red, yellow, and blue. Move 3 steps at a time. Only up, down, left, and right. Seeing this prompt, everyone came to a realization. What bullsh asterisk T undead lock? It turned out to be the simplest Rubik's Cube, and a one-sided one at that. The Rubik's Cube was something even kids could play with. After learning that the lock was a mechanism, Secret Insight said in disdain, "Tisk, so if it's that simple, I thought it was some awesome mechanism." Simple. Just as the words of the inside of heaven's secrets fell, Wang Yu suddenly froze. At that moment, Hitaki had started playing. At the same time, a notification popped up on the Rubik's Cube. "Wait," Hitaki mumbled. "It's Rubik's Cube." Hitaki Wu Kai muttered, "Don't be in such a hurry. Don't think that there's only one side of this Rubik's Cube. This isn't a Rubik's Cube." As he spoke, Wang Yu walked over and pulled Chimu to the side. "This is clearly a trap." "A trap? That can't be. Isn't there a guide on it?" Hearing Wang Yu's words, everyone was a little confused. The method to unlock the lock was clearly written, so how did it become a trap? Could it be that the system would lie to them? Of course, the system wouldn't lie, but it would. "You're too naive." Wang Yu pointed at the undead lock speechlessly. "There's no order on it. The door will open after you're done. Who knows, a boss might be released after you're done." That can't be." Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Although they weren't top players, they weren't newbies either. After playing games for so long, even if they didn't know as much as Wang Yu, they had more or less experienced how shameless designers could be. Based on the shamelessness of those guys, what Wang Yu said might not be impossible. It might even be worse. Then, what about the NIA? Everyone had a helpless look on their faces. If they opened it, a boss might appear. If they didn't open it, they wouldn't be able to enter the city. This was basically forcing the players to submit. Wang Yu thought for a moment, then waved his hand at the others. "Get out of the way." "Oh." The 3 of them quickly retreated behind Wang Yu. Seeing the 3 of them retreat, Wang Yu stepped forward and punched the undead lock. Bang! -31445 with a dull thud. A damage number appeared above the undead lock. At the same time, a health bar appeared above the undead lock. The 3 of them hurriedly cast a detect spell on the undead lock. They discovered that the undead lock also had an attribute. Undead lock, LV70, special, HP, 1000000 MP, 0 skills, none talent, sealed background introduction. Because it was too powerful to be fully controlled, it was sealed in the undead lock by the evil dragon Dominic and placed here to guard the door. The undead, who had been silent for many years, couldn't wait to break the seal. For every additional step the player took to unlock the seal, the attributes of the undead increased by 10%. F*CK. The three of them looked at each other. Their backs were numb, and their faces showed a look of horror. Damn it, this designer really had no conscience at all. He actually arranged such a trick. If it wasn't for Wang Yu stopping him, with the complicated steps of unlocking the lock, who knew what kind of crazy boss would be unlocked? The two bosses guarding the door were already so overpowered, not to mention the thing that was locked inside. This was a boss designed by a large-scale team like the Needle Guild, and it was sealed because it was too powerful to be controlled. How could it be so easy to deal with? Fortunately, Wang Yu was quick-witted. He saw through the designer's routine at a glance and smashed it violently. Now that the boss was locked in the lock and couldn't fight back, it could only stand there and take a beating even though it had tens of millions of HP. Divine Insight and the other two weren't useless. Seeing that this undead lock couldn't fight back, who didn't want to go over and deal damage. The few of them surrounded this broken lock and beat it up. In just a few minutes, the HP of the undead lock was emptied and turned into a pile of fragments scattered on the ground. System notification: you killed a powerful sealed undead. Gained EXP. After the notification, the fragments on the ground and the two bone platforms disappeared. Ding! Wang Yu's two rings fell to the ground. The four of them looked at the place where the undead lock disappeared, and their hearts were filled with emotion. This boss that didn't even have a name was easy to fight, but as the first kill, this thing was too stingy. It didn't even drop a single hair. In fact, it made sense. With the way Wang Yu and the others fought the boss, it would be strange if the boss dropped anything. Chapter 11:51. After the undead lock was broken, an opening appeared on the city gate of the undead city, which was made of piles of bones. Wang Yu and the others swaggered into the city. This city was truly deserving of its name. Both inside and outside were dead silent. There was not a single living person. After entering the city gate, Wang Yu and the others saw another wall made of bones. Unlike the previous wall, this bone wall was incredibly tall. In such a dark environment, it was so tall that the top could not be seen. Logically speaking, it should be connected to the top of a nest. Rather than calling it a wall, it was more appropriate to call it a castle. The only entrance and exit on the wall was a drawbridge. At this time, the drawbridge was retracted, blocking the exit. Below the tall, white bone walls was a moat. The moat was flowing with dark red water. It was eerie and looked like blood. It was exceptionally terrifying. Even with Wang Yu's courage, he felt a little disgusted when he saw the river, let alone Shimu. After all, he was a law-abiding citizen who had never seen blood. Suddenly seeing ketchup would cause him to feel conflicted. However, although the moat wasn't too wide, only about 20 meters wide, there was no foothold on the other side. If they didn't lower the drawbridge, they would have to cross the moat if they wanted to enter the city. Nyoga, do you know how to swim? Kenji thought for a moment and asked Wang Yu. I won't. Wang Yu shook his head decisively. As a northerner, Wang Yu rarely saw water. Moreover, Wang Yu was the Wang family's baby. He didn't even have enough time to practice martial arts. Why would he let him play in the water? It was reasonable that he didn't know how to swim. Why do you ask? Wang Yu asked in confusion. Tianji said, swim over and lower the drawbridge. Swim over? Wang Yu frowned. He picked up a stone and threw it into the water. Puff! A cloud of green smoke floated up. No one heard the sound of the stone falling into the water. The stone was vaporized into a cloud of smoke. F*CK. Seeing this scene, everyone shuddered, especially Tianji Unpredictable, who was about to swim over. At this moment, his hair was standing on end. Damn, this moat wasn't water. It was sulfuric acid. Fortunately, he had jumped in first. Otherwise, he would have died without a corpse. It would have been fine if he had only died once. But if he had melted all his equipment, who the hell was he supposed to complain to? Tianji asked with lingering fear. Then what do we do? There aren't any traps here. Right now, the scene here wasn't that big. It could be said that it could be said that it could be seen at a glance. Whether or not there were any mechanisms could be seen at a glance. Mechanism. Wang Yu looked around, then looked at the drawbridge in front of her. With a leap, she landed on the wall beside the drawbridge with a few leaps. Wang Yu leaned on the wall and checked carefully, but there was no result. So Wang Yu shook his head and jumped back. Not being able to find anything was within Wang Yu's expectations. After all, to explore the drawbridge, they had to cross the river. Normal players didn't know Qin Gong or flying, so the system couldn't give them a dead end. Therefore, Wang Yu didn't have much hope when he jumped over. After Wang Yu's investigation, there were no traps next to the drawbridge. They were completely helpless. Hataki looked at the drawbridge and shouted in despair, "There's no trap. We can't just shout for help, right?" Shout for help? Hearing Hataki's words, Wang Yu's eyes suddenly lit up. He immediately shouted, "Open the door. We want to enter the city." Seeing that Wang Yu really did shout, Hataki's face turned red. He pulled on Wang Yu's clothes and said, "Nyogo, what are you doing?" "I'm joking." Creak. Before Hataki Wu Kai could finish his sentence, a strange sound came from the top of the walls. Then, the drawbridge creaked and swayed before it slowly descended. Boom! A few seconds later, the drawbridge landed across the moat. Hataki, Kakashi, and the others were completely dumbfounded. They stared at Wang Yu blankly and said, That actually works?" They had played the game for so many years and had seen many similar scenes, but this was the first time they heard of the city gate being opened by shouting. That was King ridiculous. At this moment, everyone finally understood why Wang Yu was an expert with top-tier equipment, while the others were doing so poorly. It turned out that this petty bourgeoisie's way of thinking when playing the game was completely different from normal people. They did not play by the rules at all. The system was even more despicable. It just had to fall for this trick. Why not? Seeing that everyone was so confused, Wang Yu asked in return, "Haven't you guys been scammed by the system before?" Scammed. Everyone nodded. Wang Yu curled his lips and said, "You guys still don't learn from it. How stupid." Ugh. Faced with Wang Yu's merciless mockery, everyone chose to remain silent. What the F***CK are these game designers? They don't let people play the game properly at all. The gaming experience is terrible. The drawbridge was lowered. Wang Yu stepped onto the bridge and entered the gigantic castle. Seeing that Wang Yu had entered the castle safely, the others were relieved and walked onto the drawbridge. It couldn't be helped. They had seen how shameless the system was twice in a row. If they didn't learn from their mistakes and walked onto the bridge, they wouldn't be stupid, they would be stupid. Wang Yu could fly, so he was naturally not afraid of the traps on the bridge. Therefore, everyone was relieved when Wang Yu walked in front. Obviously, the system's shamelessness had a bottom line. At the very least, it didn't design a single-use drawbridge. After entering the castle, the scenery suddenly lit up. Wang Yu and the others were dizzy from the light. Looking around, they saw piles of gold coins and jewels around the castle. The walls of the castle were embedded with fist-sized luminous pearls. The soft light reflected off the bones and shone on the jewels, diamonds, and gold coins, making the castle as bright as day. Even a rich person like Wang Yu, who was used to seeing gold coins, was dumbfounded. Compared to this luxurious castle, Holy Dragon King Dale's golden castle was like a country bumpkin. Undead evil dragons were dragons, after all. Their obsession with glowing objects was imprinted in their bones. Of course, it wasn't just dragons that had the characteristics of dragons. There were also women. No matter how beautiful or ugly they were, no woman could resist the temptation of jewels. Hataki Wu Kai's soul almost flew out of her body when she saw the castle full of jewels. She walked to the pile of jewels in a daze and picked up a handful of diamonds. She said excitedly, "Why are we still doing the dungeon? We could just stay here." F***CK. This kid is crazy. Hearing this, everyone clenched their fists. Chapter 1153. F***CK. What the H**LL? The sudden appearance of this fellow gave everyone a fright. In terms of stature, this person was no different from an ordinary player. The only difference was that this person's skin was very pale, and his entire body exuded a gloomy aura. What was even more strange was that this person's face was wretched, which was very incompatible with his cold and gloomy aura. One had to know that they were currently in a dungeon. It was obvious that a fellow who could suddenly appear in a dungeon had to be a boss. Thinking of this, everyone instinctively cast a detection spell on him. Undead Great Spellcaster Tyran, LV 80, Dark Old Boss, Epic, HP, 800000 MP, 800000 Skill. Mastery of all Dark Element Spells. Talent, Undying Body Background Introduction. Tyran was once a great spellcaster of the church who researched dark element magic. Due to his obsession with the power of dark element magic, as well as his desire for eternal life, Tyran sacrificed his soul to the devil and became an immortal being. As such, he was hunted by the Light Church. In order to protect himself and take revenge, Tyran joined the Church of Darkness decisively and became the only human in the Council of Elders of the Dark Church. He was also the teacher of the evil dragon Dominic. He was extremely powerful, but was later imprisoned here by the evil dragon Dominic. An epic boss. After looking through Tyrone's information, the insightful heavenly secrets and the unpredictable heavenly secrets were shocked. Even Wang Yu, who was beside them, could not help but frown. Even though none of them were warlocks, they had played the game for a long time and knew the most basic background information. Warlock was a very special profession in Rebirth. In the game's background, warlocks were a group of dark element magic researchers that the Light Church had specially nurtured to deal with the Church of Darkness. Even though the spells these people used were not very honorable, they believed in the light deep down. Dark magic was divided into curses, poisons, and summoning. However, summoning was the quintessence of dark magic, yet only a few people could master it. The main reason for this was that apart from the high requirement of the practitioner's power, one had to give up their faith in the light in order to master this magic. This Tyran was a dark great wizard who was proficient in both curses and poisons. He had fallen from grace in order to forcefully cultivate the summoning element. Hence, after Tyran's death, the church had ordered the destruction of all dark summoning spellbooks. This resulted in the loss of the warlock profession's most powerful summoning spell. As for the voodoo professions in the dark faction, they will be able to learn summoning techniques after their second awakening at level 80. Because of this, in the light faction, the incomplete warlock class was even more unpopular than the Grandmaster of Combat. It could be said that it was the class with the least number of players in the game. Even so, the warlock's crowd control skills and debuff skills were the most annoying in the game. Be it in PvE or PvP, a good crowd control warlock could basically decide the outcome of the game. As a necromancer, Tyran was the ancestor of all warlock players. Before he fell, he was already proficient in both poisons and curses. Now, Tyran was proficient in all dark magic. As his name suggested, he had also mastered the summoning element. One could only imagine how terrifying he was. Of course, this was only for the average player. The main reason why Wang Yu couldn't help but frown was because of Tyran's immortal body. Immortal body. This might be unfamiliar to others, but Wang Yu couldn't be more familiar with it. Back then, a small bug had tormented the people of Chuanjin because of this attribute. If it wasn't for the fact that they had found a special environment to destroy it, everyone would probably have died from exhaustion. Tyran was a level 80 Dark Gold epic boss, the pinnacle quest for all professionals in the game. Not only was he powerful and had high AI, but he also had the characteristic of an epic boss that grew with battle. Now that he had an immortal body, there was no way to defeat him. Ha ha! At that time, Tyran also noticed Wang Yu and the others. He grabbed Hitaki and shouted, "Little girl, you're right. Since you're here, there's no need for you to leave. Stay here and be my slaves. As for you," Tyran glanced at Hitaki and laughed again. "You're so pretty. It'd be a waste to kill you. How about you become my wife?" Pretty. Everyone was dumbfounded by Tyran's words. It was true that Hitaki was a woman, but she was a genuine beast man. She had a green face, sharp fangs, and a round waist. It would be more accurate to say that she was rough. As for being pretty, that was definitely not the case. Only the heavens knew how long Tyran had been locked up in this place. How could he say something that went against his conscience? Putting aside Wang Yu and the others, even Shimu himself would not believe it if he were to hear it. Of course, Hataki knew that it was a lie, but she was still very touched. She turned to Tyran with shining eyes and asked, Are you telling the truth? Of course, Tyran said confidently. I'm different from you guys. I won't lie. Upon hearing Tyrone's words, Hataki Might Kai was so moved that he almost burst into tears. He clenched his fists and was so emotional that he couldn't speak. As an NPC with high AI, Tyrone would be destroyed by the system if he lied. Therefore, he was definitely speaking from the bottom of his heart. TSK, Wang Yu and the others clicked their tongues in amazement. At the same time, they felt goosebumps all over their bodies. Holy crap! This Tyran's original name should be Teddy, right? They had long heard that necromancers were a bunch of psychopaths, but they didn't really believe it. Now that they saw Tyran, they realized that the rumors weren't just rumors. If that's the case, Wang Yu thought for a moment, then looked at Tyran and asked, We'll give this lady to you, and you'll let us pass this stage. How about that? Wang Yu lived up to his reputation as a member of Chuanjin. There were only things that others wouldn't dare to think of, but there was nothing that he didn't dare to do. Even under such circumstances, this brat was still involved in the business of kidnapping and selling women. A normal person's worldview wouldn't be able to accept something like this. Even though Seer and Unfathomable didn't have a good impression of Ataki, they couldn't help but get angry when they heard what Wang Yu said. They couldn't help but yell at Wang Yu. F***CK? What are you talking about? Hataki didn't say anything, but her eyes were filled with displeasure. Holy crap! Everyone thought that Wang Yu was a good person. They didn't expect him to betray his teammates at such a crucial time. He really did betray his teammates. Chapter 1154. It had to be said that the saying, one is marked by the company one keeps, was very reasonable. Wang Yu had been such a naive child back then. After spending so much time with Wuji, his thoughts had been led astray. Just like Wuji, he habitually materialized everything around him. That was true. Hataki's level was low, her equipment was poor, and her mechanical skills were even worse. If she had some skill, she wouldn't have been defeated so easily. From the battle, just now, it was clear that this girl was the damage output type. She couldn't even run away properly in battle. Moreover, the party already had the archer Unpredictable, so Hataki's existence wasn't very strong. On the other hand, Tyrone was an epic boss. Not only was his strength unfathomable, he also had the undying talent, which was the most troublesome to deal with since Wang Yu started playing the game. Using Hataki's 50% to trade for such a boss was definitely worth it. Of course, habitually materializing everything around him wasn't a good habit. Moreover, Tyrone was an epic boss with extremely high AI. Naturally, he wouldn't be easily fooled. Tyrone laughed coldly when he heard Wang Yu's words. Young man, you need strength to negotiate. I'll accept this girl, and you'll become Lord Tyrone's servants. How about it? Do you feel honored? Hurry up and cut off your own head. Don't wait for me to do it myself. All right, this Tyrone doesn't have a good sense of aesthetics, but his words are very arrogant. It wasn't hard to see that this grandson's personality was twisted. Moreover, he was an extreme believer in the rule of strength. Running away was definitely not the way to deal with such a person. Right now, the only thing he could do was to strike first. Look over there. Just at this moment, Wang Yu suddenly pointed behind Tyrone and yelled out loudly. Tyrone subconsciously turned around when he heard this. At that moment, Wang Yu stomped on the ground and charged in front of Tyrone. He used Tiger Strike to drag Hataki's 50% chance in front of him. At the same time, Wang Yu pulled back his arms and used a knee strike. Then, with a twist of his feet, Hataki's 50% chance was thrown behind him. The moment Wang Yu charged out, Unpredictable also aimed several throwing knives at Tyrone. Seeing that Wang Yu had saved Hataki's 50% chance, Unpredictable waved his hand and threw the throwing knives at Tyrone. At the same time, Tyrone turned around. Seeing that Wang Yu had snatched Hitaki's 50% chance, Unpredictable flew into a rage. He reached into his wide cloak and pulled out a staff. The staff was made of some unknown bone. Its entire body shone with a golden light, and there was a skull at the top. The skull's eye sockets and nose bridge were inlaid with 3 huge red, green, and blue gems. They shone with a terrifying light. Tyrone tapped the staff lightly, and the blue gems emitted a ray of light that deflected Unpredictable's throwing knives. Then, a row of white bone spears appeared out of thin air and stabbed at Wang Yu's back. As everyone knew, Wang Yu's senses were quite sharp. The moment Tyrone's staff was pulled out, Wang Yu felt the murderous intent. In the blink of an eye, Wang Yu turned around and crouched on the ground. He raised his left arm diagonally and switched his weapon to a shield. Clang, 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 clang. The bone spears fell like rain, hitting Wang Yu's shield with ear-piercing sounds. After a wave of bone spears, Wang Yu's shield had hit rock bottom. F***CK. After putting away his shield, Wang Yu sucked in a breath of cold air and cursed. Although Wang Yu's shield wasn't big, it was still a divine weapon. Its defense far surpassed that of a shield warrior's sturdy and cumbersome tower shield. Back when Wang Yu was surrounded by nearly 1,000 people, it had easily withstood their attacks. However, Tyrone's attack had nearly destroyed the shield's block value. Fortunately, the shield in Wang Yu's hand was a divine weapon. Otherwise, with Tyrone's damage output, the shield would have been destroyed and Wang Yu would have died. That shield of yours? Tyrone was very surprised to see that Wang Yu hadn't died. He fixed his gaze on the shield in Wang Yu's hand. When he saw Wang Yu's shield clearly, a trace of shock appeared on his face. After recovering from his shock, Tyrone raised his staff again. The skull on the staff flashed with a green light, and a cloud of green poison mist began to condense. Wang Yu rolled on the ground until he reached Tyrone's feet. He pressed his hands against the ground and kicked Tyrone in the face with Thunder Stomp. Thunder Stomp was Wang Yu's most commonly used control skill. Its priority was very high. Although Tyrone was an epic boss that was more than 20 levels higher than Wang Yu, he was still a humanoid monster in a weak mage class. Therefore, his resistance to control skills wasn't very high. Wang Yu kicked out with both feet, using all his strength. Bang! 44125 with a muffled sound. A damage number appeared above Tyrone's head. At the same time, he was kicked backwards. Pooh! As Tyrone's skill was interrupted, the poison mist on his staff dissipated. Taking advantage of his opponent's weakness had always been Wang Yu's style. Seeing that Tyrone had been controlled, Wang Yu followed closely behind. He jumped directly above Tyrone, crossed his legs, and consecutively stomped on Tyrone's pale face. Minus 22,145, minus 33,411, minus 55,124, minus 100. A string of damage values floated above Tyrone's head. Tyrone had already lost his balance. With a few more kicks from Wang Yu, he lost his balance and fell to the ground with a thud. Seeing this, Wang Yu bent his knee and aimed at Tyrone's neck. He launched a knee rush from above, smashing his knee into Tyrone's neck. 61112 2-inch tyrannical fist dance. As a huge damage value floated up, Wang Yu's fist shone with a dazzling light. With a roar, he slammed his fists into Tyrone's face. 81124-102214. Combo damage and rebirth was a terrifying damage output. As a grandmaster of combat who relied on combo attacks to make a living, Wang Yu's combo was more practical than any of the techniques on the forum. The damage was even more terrifying. Tyrone's 8 million HP was reduced by a tenth by Wang Yu's combo. 1/10 of that was 800,000. In such a short period of time, not to mention a weak grandmaster combat, even a fully equipped mage would not be able to deal half of the damage that Wang Yu had dealt. Quick attacks, agile movements, and short skill cooldowns. These were the advantages of a grandmaster of combat. Wang Yu skillfully used these 3 advantages to display the most terrifying side of a grandmaster combat. Seeing this, Oracle's jaw dropped to the ground. Oracle had even forgotten to deal damage. Hataki, on the other hand, was completely immersed in Wang Yu's cool and handsome combo. His eyes were sparkling like stars, and he had turned into an infatuated fool. At that moment, the three of them only had one thought in their minds. Damn, is this really a Grandmaster of Combat? Why is he different from the Grandmasters I know? Chapter 1155. Kacha, Kacha. As the white light shone, the sound of bones dislocating could be heard. Tyron's body was instantly covered in a layer of white bone armor. Not only that, but after the bone armor covered his entire body, it actually wrapped around Wang Yu's body. Wang Yu frowned and hurriedly retracted his hand. He pushed at Tyron's chest with both hands and used the recoil to flip backwards, landing firmly not far from Tyron. Without Wang Yu's suppression, Tyron straightened his body and stood up like a zombie. Without waiting for Wang Yu to step forward again, the staff in Tyron's hand once again shone with a blue light. He drew a line on the ground from left to right. Immediately, a long bone wall rose from the ground, separating Tyron and Wang Yu. After pulling out the bone wall, Tyron clenched his left hand, and a bone spear appeared in his hand. He threw it at Wang Yu, who was on the other side of the wall. Although the bone wall was extremely sturdy, it seemed to have a mind of its own. Tyron's bone spear pierced through the bone wall as if it was passing through water, shooting toward Wang Yu. Wang Yu tilted his head slightly, dodging the bone spear. The bone spear did not slow down at all, and directly pierced into Divine Insight's head, who was behind Wang Yu. Following the sound of a sharp blade entering a body, Divine Insight did not even get a chance to make a sound before his head exploded. He turned into light and disappeared. Poor Divine Insight. He was once again caught by a boss. It cannot be helped. Assassins were very strong in PvP, and their efficiency in clearing small monsters was not low. However, they were in an awkward situation when they encounter a boss. This was because most bosses had relatively high perception settings. If an assassin's stealth was not high enough, they would be easily detected. Without stealth, an assassin could not even be compared to a Grandmaster of Combat. Naturally, they would be the first target of a high-level boss. It was reasonable that he had been targeted twice. Divine Insight was also aware of this. After all, assassins are always the ones who get hurt in dungeons was a truth that the players of Rebirth had long since concluded. However, no one had expected that Divine Insight would still be able to stab him to death, even though he had consciously hidden far away. This showed just how terrifying Tyron's attack range was. When Unpredictable and Hataki saw this, they subconsciously retreated a dozen or so meters, while Tyron's bone spears continued to fly toward them from the other side of the wall. Wang Yu was able to move about freely even amidst the tens of thousands of arrows, so he naturally did not place Tyron's bone spears in his eyes. Wang Yu stepped to the side and turned around, as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. No matter how Tyron's bone spears flew, they were unable to harm Wang Yu in the slightest. Not long after, Wang Yu's body was filled with bone spears. Tyron, who was on the other side of the bone wall, saw that all of his attacks had missed, and his complexion turned even paler. The soul fire in his eye sockets trembled, and the blue light on his staff was pushed to its limits. At the same time, he clenched his withered left hand. Clatter, clatter. The sound of bones colliding rang in Wang Yu's ears. Not good. Hearing this sound, Wang Yu frowned. Just as he was about to jump back, the countless bone spears on the ground rapidly gathered and flew towards Wang Yu. Before Wang Yu could dodge, the countless bone spears merged into a gigantic cage, trapping Wang Yu within. 10,000 Bones Prison. This was one of the Warlock class's ultimate control skills. It was a control skill that could imprison any target within the range of the bone prison. Naturally, Wang Yu was not one to sit around and wait for death. After realizing that he had fallen into a trap, Wang Yu punched and kicked the bone cage repeatedly. Pung, 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 as Wang Yu's powerful punches and kicks shook the cage one after another. However, Wang Yu had clearly underestimated the 10,000 bones prison sturdiness. This thing could even trap a boss in the hands of a player. Now that a boss like Tyran was using it, how could a player escape so easily? As such, no matter how much Wang Yu attacked, the cage remained firm. Wang Yu's attacks could only create a Taiguda run sound effect. Seeing that Wang Yu had become a struggling bird in the cage, Tyran laughed and removed the bone wall. He walked up to the cage and smiled at Wang Yu. "Kid, you're strong, but you're brainless. How can an ant like you break my cage?" "Is that so?" Seeing Tyran remove the bone wall and walk up to him, a strange smile appeared on Wang Yu's face. Seeing this, Tyrone was startled. Suddenly, Wang Yu, who was in the cage, turned into a streak of white light and disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already in front of him. "Hee, you didn't expect this, did you? I used blink and smashed the cage to lure you here." Wang Yu chuckled. With a flip of his hand, he switched his weapon to a longsword. He took a step forward and stabbed Tyran in the chest. The long sword pierced through the gap in Tyran's bone armor and stabbed into his body. It felt like stabbing a lump of dead meat. -33321, a damage value floated up. Tyran's body swayed as he swung his staff at Wang Yu's head. Wang Yu lowered his head and sidestepped Tyran's attack. He turned around and stabbed Tyran in the ribs with his longsword. -21145, another damage value floated up. Tyran was pushed back a step by Wang Yu's powerful force. He gripped the tip of his staff with both hands and turned around to stab the back of Wang Yu's head. Tyran was only a mage and a despicable necromancer at that. He was more suited for sneak attacks from shadows. As for close combat, it wasn't that Wang Yu was bragging. It wasn't as if Wang Yu had never seen the top bosses in the game. Disregarding the difference in stats, even the Holy Dragon King Dales was nothing in Wang Yu's eyes. A mere necromancer dared to show off in front of an expert? Wang Yu didn't even turn his head to look at Tyran's attack. With his right foot as the axis, he twisted his body and moved from Tyran's right to Tyran's left. Tyran's staff smashed into thin air. His head and arms were moving to the right, leaving a large opening on the left side of his neck. Wang Yu gripped the hilt of his sword with both hands and used all his strength to stab Tyran's neck. -111245, a critical hit. As the damage value floated up, the health bar above Tyran's head visibly trembled. Tyran was also pushed back a few steps. He raised his staff and was about to cast a spell. Wang Yu took 2 steps forward and followed closely behind. He slashed his sword at Tyran's wrist, forcefully interrupting Tyran's casting. The two began another round of melee combat. More accurately, Tyran was once again violently stabbed by Wang Yu. Wang Yu had seen Tyran's strength clearly. Against an epic boss like this, the slightest bit of carelessness could result in death. So since they couldn't come to an agreement, they had to kill Tyran when he was at his weakest before his combat strength had fully matured. The best way was naturally to attack the enemy's weaknesses with one's strengths. Pulling a range boss in a melee combat was definitely a good idea. Chapter 1156. Wang Yu used his movement technique and circled around Tyrone, thrusting his long sword at the same time. Wang Yu's sword pierced through the gaps in the bone armor, stabbing into Tyrone's body again and again, causing him to howl in pain. Seeing this, Hataki Wu Wu Kai and Heavenly Secret hurriedly raised their crossbows and fired at Tyrone. It was common knowledge that chainmail armor could not withstand arrows mainly because of the gaps in its structure. Bone armor was even more so. Although it was extraordinarily sturdy, it could only defend against punches, kicks, and heavy weapons. Such gaps could not even block Wang Yu's sword, let alone an archer's arrows. With Wang Yu around, the two did not have to worry about Tyrone's skills. With the three of them working together, Tyrone's HP fell rapidly. With Wang Yu's high attack power and the two of them standing still, the damage they dealt was astonishing. In less than 10 minutes, Tyrone's HP had fallen to 30%. It was rare that Tyrone did not go berserk when his HP fell to 30%. With a spurt of energy, the three of them emptied Tyrone's HP. Tyrone screamed in pain as he lay on the ground. He died so easily? Seeing that Tyran had died, heavenly secrets, unfathomable, and mystique were both rather surprised. Tyran was a level 80 epic boss. No matter how one looked at it, he was a legendary figure. He was an all-purpose dark mage, yet Shifeng had only used a few of his skills. Wasn't it a little too childish for him to die like this? Wang Yu glanced at Tyrone's corpse and frowned. It's not that simple. Didn't you see this guy's talent? Talent? Unpredictable and unpredictable were trying to recall what kind of talent Tyrone had when Tyrone suddenly resurrected and stood up, full of HP. I knew it. Seeing Tyrone resurrect, Wang Yu's eyes narrowed and he raised his fist. However, the resurrected Tyrone seemed to know that Wang Yu would do this. After getting up, he floated backward and dodged Wang Yu's attack. After flying out of Wang Yu's attack range, Tyrone looked at the three of them and laughed disdainfully. Ha ha, a bunch of ignorant ants. Do you really think I'll be killed so easily? Come, this old man will show you some colors. As he spoke, the staff in Tyrone's hand flashed with a dazzling green light. Whoosh! After a soft sound, a circle of green, poisonous fog spread out from Tyrone's body in 360 degrees. It's poison nova. Lie down. Everyone was familiar with toxic nova. Just a moment ago, Buzzrick had already used it once. Everyone knew that this skill was a full-on attack, so they needed to find a place to hide. In this castle, there was no place to hide. If they wanted to hide, they could only lie on the ground or jump into the air like Wang Yu. The deadly poison brushed past the backs of the two men. Just as the two heaved a sigh of relief and were about to get up, Tyran pointed his staff at the ground and softly chanted, "Undead Curse." At the same time, Tianji and Tianji's bodies sank as a powerful force pulled them to the ground. It was as if they were rooted to the ground. No matter how hard they struggled, they were unable to move. Pa! Turin snapped his fingers, and the color of the staff in his hand suddenly turned red. Skeleton warriors wielding long swords emerged from the ground beside him. The bones of these skeletal warriors were black and shiny, and the weapons in their hands shone brightly. It was obvious that they had been enhanced by dark magic. Compared to the trash undead summoned by Buzzrick, these skeletal warriors were much stronger. Seeing that unpredictable fate was about to die under his sword, Wang Yu leaped into the air and flew above unpredictable fate. He swung his staff in a circle and sent the skeleton warriors flying. Then, he reached out to pull unpredictable fate up. Hee, humans are so childish. Turin chuckled, his staff turning green as he chanted, "Decaying poison." Following that, a gentle green light radiated from the ground beneath Unpredictable's body, instantly turning him into a shade of green. At that time, Wang Yu also grabbed Unpredictable Tianji's hand. The green followed Unpredictable Tianji's hand and spread towards Wang Yu's body. Decaying poison, Wang Yu jumped in fright. He hurriedly let go of Unpredictable Fate and leaped to the side. With a warlock like Chun Xiang as a friend, Wang Yu had a good understanding of dark magic. Decaying poison was a rare skill of warlocks. It could spread the poison to any living creature the target came into contact with. The more players infected by the poison, the faster they would lose health. It could be said to be an extremely tyrannical AoE poison skill. Who would have thought that Turin would be so cunning? He even knew how to exploit the weakness of players' emotions to attack his target. Of course, the lives of players in the game weren't that important. Seeing that the two of them had been poisoned by Turin, Wang Yu immediately leaped towards Turin. Seeing Wang Yu flying over, Turin used the same trick. His staff turned blue and was about to summon Bone Wall. Wang Yu reached behind his back with his left hand and pulled out a red musket. He aimed at Turin and pulled the trigger. Bang! Following the sound of a gunshot, a repelling bullet blasted into Turin's head. The powerful attack forced Turin 2 steps back, his head tilting back. At the same time, Wang Yu had already flown above Turin. Learning from mistakes was the virtue of an epic boss. Having been beaten to death by Wang Yu once, Turin naturally knew how powerful Wang Yu's close combat abilities were. Seeing Wang Yu fly over, Turin hurriedly raised his staff to block. Wang Yu stepped on Turin's staff and jumped behind him. He landed with eagle stamp and pressed his knees together. His left hand grabbed Turin's chin from behind and pulled him down by the chin. The back of Turin's head rested on Wang Yu's knees. Wang Yu frowned, his expression solemn. He grabbed Turin with his left hand and exerted 120% of his strength with his right, throwing punch after punch at Turin's face. Bang, 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 bang. The rhythmic sound of fists hitting flesh rang out. -25144-3441-5-51454. A chain of damage numbers appeared above Turin's head. Tyren was a weak magic-based boss, so his resistance to crowd control skills wasn't very high. Wang Yu's left hand was grabbing at Tyren, while her right fist was punching at Tyren, causing him to lose his footing. As the combo damage increased, the speed at which Turin's health dropped became more and more obvious. Bang, bang, bang. Wang Yu's fists maintained a steady rhythm. The empty castle was filled with the terrifying sounds of attacks. Finally, under the bombardment of Wang Yu's iron fists, Turin's health bar emptied. With another scream, he died at Wang Yu's hands. Chapter 1157. GAGA. After reviving, Tyren let out a strange cry and floated into the air. He smirked at Wang Yu and the others. Few ants? You want to hurt me? Wang Yu and the others were completely speechless when they saw Tyren resurrect and act so arrogantly. Meow, the immortal body is really disgusting. He can still resurrect after dying like that. Can the system be any more shameless? Huh, why did this guy look a little different from before? He's full HP? Just as everyone was feeling helpless against Tyren, a voice suddenly came from behind. Everyone turned around and saw God's secret running back from the resurrection point. He was looking at Tyren in surprise. He's activated? Hearing God's secret's words, everyone couldn't help but be stunned. Then they looked at Tyren and realized that something was wrong. In the game, a boss aura was related to its special effects. For example, when a boss used aura, the aura's special effect were obviously different from normal. So, if a boss strength had increased or changed, experienced players could basically see it with their naked eyes. It was obvious that Tyren's aura and special effects were much stronger than when they first saw him. However, because he didn't activate aura after being killed twice in a row, they didn't notice it. God's secret had died before Tyren was killed the first time. Since he ran back, Tyren had already died twice. So, when he saw Tyren again, he could see the change at a glance. This was basically the same as looking at one's own child and not feeling that they were growing, but others always felt that their child was growing fast. If the boss aura had increased, its attributes would definitely have increased as well. Tyrone was currently at full health, so there was no way he would explode when he was at critical health. It was truly strange for him to be like this, so everyone instinctively cast Detect on him again. However, after using Detect on Tyren, God's secret said in surprise, I can't see Tyren's attributes. You can't see his attributes? Hearing God's words, Wang Yu's expression froze. When players reached level 50, their detection skills would also awaken. The detection range of their targets would also increase from level 20 to level 30. At this moment, Wang Yu was in the same party as Unpredictable. He knew that Unpredictable was level 52. If even he couldn't see the boss's stats, didn't that mean that the boss's level had risen to above level 82? Thinking of this, Wang Yu hurriedly cast a detection spell. Sure enough, Tyrone's level had risen to 83. At the same time, there was an additional buff at the bottom of Tyrone's attributes. More healthy after death. Necromancer Tyren has an immortal body. Every time he revives, his level will increase according to the number of times he has died, up to a maximum of level 200. Lasts for 3,000 seconds. If he dies again during this period, he will be refreshed. Wang Yu was speechless when he saw Tyren's current state. He then sent a screenshot to the party channel. F***CK. Destiny's Unpredictable and the others cried out when they saw the screenshot. What do you mean by shameless? This is called. They have been playing the game for some time now, but this was the first time they had seen such a ridiculous stat. Every time a boss died, It would level up according to the number of times it died. In other words, every time it died, it would gain 1 level. If it died a second time, it would gain 2 levels. If everyone managed to kill Tyrone again, it would gain 3 levels and reach level 86. If this bastard kept dying, it wasn't impossible for him to become a level 200 final boss. It was obvious that he didn't want players to attack him. With such a powerful boss, it was impossible to pass through without attacking him. Attacking him was useless. The more you attacked him, the more powerful he would become. How the F***ck were you supposed to play the game? Even Wong Yu wanted to give up after seeing Tyrone's stats, let alone Destiny, who didn't want to fight in the first place. The parasite's undying body was already a headache. This guy's undying body was clearly much stronger than the parasite's. What do we do? Are we going to fight or not? At this moment, everyone's eyes fell on Wong Yu. In the game, the words of experts were always the truth. As everyone's backbone, Wong Yu naturally had to bear the responsibility of making a decision. Wong Yu was also in a difficult position. If he retreated now, it would be a pity to give up halfway. Moreover, this wasn't Wong Yu's personality. But if he forced the boss, everyone had seen its stats. It was clearly a waste of time and asking for trouble. After some thought, Wong Yu gritted his teeth and said, "We have to fight, but we have to find the right way. Otherwise, it'll be a waste of time." "Then what's the right way?" the three asked in unison. Wong Yu shook his head helplessly. "I don't know either. F***ck. Are you guys done talking?" Just as they were discussing how to deal with Tyrone, who was in midair, saw that the 4 of them were ignoring him. He immediately became impatient and shouted at everyone, "What do you think? Have you thought it through? Do you want to be this old man's slave? This old man can give you eternal life and unparalleled strength." Tui, seeing Heaven's secrets had suffered a loss, he was clearly very sensitive to the word slave. When he heard Tyrone's words, he immediately said angrily, "If you have any skills, just use them." "Ha ha ha," Tyrone shouted. "Since that's the case, this old man will show you what I'm capable of." As he spoke, Tyrone's staff flashed with a dazzling red light. At the same time, Tyrone raised his staff and pointed it in the air. Then, a huge circular summoning circle appeared under Tyrone's feet. "Come out, my child." Following Tyrone's furious roar, a gigantic skeletal dragon head emerged from the summoning magic circle in midair, followed by gigantic bone claws and broad bone wings. In an instant, a bone dragon emerged from the summoning magic circle in midair and landed on the ground. When the bone dragon landed, the surroundings trembled slightly. Immediately afterward, the bone dragon spread its wings and opened its mouth at Wong Yu and the others. Although Wong Yu couldn't hear anything, he could sense that the bone dragon was roaring. As for Heaven's secrets and the others, they were in a much more miserable state. Dragon-type creatures were innately intimidating to other races. With Dales's Dragon Emperor bloodline, Wong Yu naturally didn't fear the bone dragon. As for the others, they couldn't even lift their heads due to the bone dragon's immense pressure, their basic attributes plummeting by 20%. Wong Yu couldn't tell how high the bone dragon's rank was. However, judging from the others' attribute reductions, it was at least level 100. Chapter 1158. At Tyrone's command, the skeletal dragon lowered its head, opened its mouth, and charged at Wong Yu and the others. The skeletal dragon was huge. Although it looked clumsy, its strides were long, and it ran at an incredible speed. Clang, clang, clang. With a distance of tens of meters between them, it only took a few steps to reach Wong Yu and the others. "Run to the back." Wong Yu roared at the sight and gave the order to Divine Insight and the others. When the 3 heard Wong Yu's roar, they shivered and turned to run. "Trying to run? Oomph." Tyrone, who was hovering in the air, sneered when he heard that. He waved his staff, and a bone wall rose up to block the castle's entrance, blocking Heaven's secrets trio. At the same time, the bone dragon had already caught up to the trio. Seeing that the 3 were about to be rammed to death by the skeletal dragon, Wong Yu's figure flashed and jumped between the 3 and the skeletal dragon. "Stop right there." Wong Yu roared and activated his internal breath and dragon-subduing palm. Immediately, a golden light burst out from Wang Yu's body. He raised his hands, and huge waves turned into dragon shadows and collided with the skeletal dragon. True esoteric dragon, subduing shocker. A row of golden words lit up on top of Wang Yu's head. With the support of dragon-subduing palm, toppling the mountains and overturning the seas would be strengthened into shocker. Now, with another layer of internal breath, shocker was strengthened once again. Dragon-subduing palm was originally a palm technique that countered dragons. Now that it was strengthened by internal breath, the power of this palm suddenly multiplied. As the most powerful move in dragon-subduing palm, this strengthened version of shocker could already allow Wang Yu to fight against any dragon boss. Even Dragon Emperor Dales would have to think twice before facing it, let alone a small skeletal dragon without any AI. Boom! Accompanied by a deafening sound, the huge skeletal dragon was directly sent flying by Wang Yu's palm. Walala! After being hit by Wang Yu's palm, the bone dragon's HP dropped by 1/5, and half of its head was sent flying by Wang Yu's palm. The bone dragon's body let out a strange sound, as if it had been heavily injured. The dragon-subduing palm lived up to its name. In terms of dealing with dragon-type monsters, there was absolutely no other skill that could beat it. This the legendary Super Scion? Seeing Wang Yu's current state, the Seer of Heaven's secrets and the others couldn't help but freeze on the spot, as if they'd forgotten their own situation. Tyren, who was in midair, could not help but reveal a shocked expression when he saw the power of Wang Yu's palm strike. He cried out involuntarily, "Dragon! Dragon-subduing palm!" As the saying goes, take advantage of his weakness and kill him. Tyren had an immortal body, but this bone dragon didn't. Wang Yu didn't pay attention to the surprised Tyren. With a backhand palm strike, he blasted a hole in the bone wall, allowing the other three to run out. Then, he leaped and landed on top of the bone dragon. The bone dragon was stunned by Wang Yu's astounding. As soon as it recovered, it shook its head, wanting to seek revenge on Wang Yu. However, Wang Yu kicked down from the sky, using the thunder stomp version of Dragon Tail Whip. The pitiful bone dragon had just gotten up when Wang Yu stepped on its head, smashing it into the ground. Wang Yu landed on the ground and turned around, activating Wrath of Gale and Thunderbolt. His strength attribute soared, and his hands grabbed the bone dragon's upper and lower jaw. With a twist, the huge bone dragon was forcibly flipped upside down by Wang Yu. The bone dragon was just a skeleton, and its movements were much more clumsy than a real dragon's. After such a large body was flipped over, it completely lost the ability to move. Wang Yu formed a claw with his palm and grabbed the bone dragon's neck, pinching his 5 fingers together. Crack! A section of the bone dragon's neck bone was pulled out by Wang Yu. Wang Yu had studied the tendon dislocation bone hand since he was young. It was an expert in breaking bones. Even if it was a living dragon, Wang Yu would be able to break its joints, let alone a skeleton. The bone dragon's ribs had definitely met its nemesis when it encountered Wang Yu. Crack! Crack! Wang Yu's figure constantly moved around the bone dragon's body. At the same time, he crisscrossed his hands, grabbing at the bone dragon's vital joints. With the sound of joints falling off, Wang Yu quickly threw over a dozen bones to the ground. Tyrone, who was in midair, saw his beloved bone dragon being pressed to the ground. Rage rose in his heart, and he shouted, "Trash! Get up!" The soul fire in the bone dragon's eyes flashed, and it began to struggle. Wang Yu smiled, threw away the bones in his hand, and struck the bone dragon's body with his palm. Crash! The enormous dragon was struck by Wang Yu's palm, and it instantly turned into a pile of white bones. Seeing the bone dragon being torn apart by Wang Yu, Tyrone almost fell from the sky. He shouted angrily, "Ridiculous worm! Do you think you can kill my eternal servant like this?" As he spoke, Tyrone spat a mouthful of old blood on the staff in his hand. When the staff came into contact with Tyrone's blood, it shone brightly and enveloped the bone dragon. At the same time, the bones that Wang Yu had torn apart were quickly pieced back together. In just a few seconds, a brand new bone dragon reappeared in front of Wang Yu. Damn, this is too shameless. Seeing this scene, Wang Yu was completely speechless. This system was really unreasonable when it became shameless. He had gone to great lengths to tear apart the bone dragon, but in the time it took for the bone dragon to spit blood, it had already pieced it back together. Clearly, competing with Tyrone to see who could tear apart the bone dragon faster was a very unwise move. In addition, Wang Yu's dragon-subduing palm and wrath of gale and lightning had already disappeared. Whether he could forcefully tear apart the bone dragon again was still a question. Thus, without another word, Wang Yu activated his Qin Gong and jumped to the door. He flew out of the castle, arrived at the suspension bridge, and rejoined the team. Tyrone and the bone dragon chased all the way to the castle gate. Seeing the four of them on the bridge and running to the other side, Tyrone was shocked. He patted the bone dragon's head and recalled it, then turned around and returned to the castle. When Wang Yu and the others saw that Tyrone had stopped chasing after them, question marks appeared in their heads. They were all puzzled. Why isn't this bastard chasing us anymore? After all, the aggro of dungeon monsters wouldn't stop until one of them was dead. It was just a bridge away, but Tyrone had already turned around and returned to the castle. Was this guy too lazy to even walk a few dozen meters? At this moment, Hataki guessed, could it be that he can't leave the castle? Can't leave the castle? That makes sense. Hearing Hataki's guess, everyone expressed their agreement. From the background story, Tyrone had imprisoned Tyrone, thinking about how this old thing was so lonely that he couldn't find anyone to accompany him, and even treated Hataki's Hataki as a beauty. This was completely in line with the various attributes of his old house. But this castle doesn't have any barriers or restrictions. We can all come and go as we please, so why is he imprisoned? Hataki's Hataki asked again about that. Hearing this, everyone hurriedly looked around the castle. The scenery around the castle was very simple. Apart from a terrifying moat, there was nothing that could block their way in and out. Right? A moat. Chapter 1159. Wang Yu had experience in dealing with monsters that possessed an immortal body. Looking at the gloomy water in the moat, Wang Yu immediately thought of the stomach acid that had dissolved the undying parasites. It seemed that there were no immortal creatures in the game. As long as the monster was completely destroyed, he would not be able to revive, no matter how powerful he was. The water in the moat was like acid, even melting rocks. It was obvious that this was the breakthrough point. Otherwise, with Tyrone's strength, he would not be able to escape the castle. Nyogo, have you thought of something? Seeing Wang Yu staring blankly at the moat, everyone couldn't help but ask. Yes. Wang Yu nodded, then pointed at Tyrone in the castle and asked the others, does anyone have a way to lure Tyrone out? Just lure him to the bridge. Wang Yu's idea was simple. As a humanoid boss, Tyrone's resistance to control skills was very low. As long as Tyrone dared to step onto the bridge, Wang Yu had several ways to throw him off. Hearing Wang Yu's words, everyone shook their heads. Everyone had seen the situation just now. This Tyrone was very cunning. He had been killed twice by Wang Yu, so his hatred was definitely off the charts. Even so, this fellow did not even step out of the castle's main gate. The difficulty of luring him out was definitely no less than killing him on the spot. Seeing everyone's expressions, Wang Yu was not surprised at all. After all, Tyrone was an epic rank boss with extremely high AI. It would be unreliable if he could be tricked into drowning in the river so easily. Since he had found the breakthrough point, there must be a way to deal with Tyrone. Otherwise, the system would not have created a moat here. But how should he deal with it? At this moment, Wang Yu felt that the answer was right in front of him, but also one step away from it. Wang Yu was a person who understood himself very well. In this kind of situation, he would not be able to think of anything using the thinking of an ordinary person. He had to think of the problem using the thinking of the people from Chuanjin. What would the people of Chuanjin think? Wang Yu rubbed his chin and got into character. If it was Brother Chun, Mingdu, and the other wretched people, they would definitely say, let Xiao Wu seduce the boss. Seducing him was a good idea, but Tyren seemed to be a very calm person. Hatred wouldn't blind him, and he wouldn't let lust get to his head. Practical people like famous Or Dao Xue and North Sea Yoyu would most likely resort to using money as a bribe. However, even if they were alive to earn, they had to be alive to spend. Putting aside the fact that Tyrone was guarding a castle full of treasures, he did not care about money at all. Even if he was poor, he would not do something as stupid as exchanging his life for money. As for brainless people like Third Elder Bao and Meng, they would definitely listen to Wuji. Thinking of Wuji, the image of Wuji's treacherous face suddenly popped up in Wang Yu's mind. With a face full of disdain, he said, "If he doesn't come over to let you hit him, won't you go over and hit him?" "Yes, go over and hit him." Thinking of this, Wang Yu punched his palm and said excitedly, "Who has a poison bottle?" "Bottle? What do you want that thing for? To seal Tyrone?" Seeing Heaven's secrets, and the other two were confused. Everyone was thinking about how to lure Tyrone out, but Wang Yu was suddenly looking for a bottle. Could it be that he wanted to use a technique like demonic sealing wave to store Tyrone inside? Thinking of how Wang Yu could transform into a super scion that emitted golden light, it was not impossible for him to have such a strange skill. "What seal? Do you have one or not?" Wang Yu ignored everyone's nonsense and continued asking. "Yes." At this time, Hitaki 50% raised his hand and said, "I have." As he spoke, Hitaki opened his other hand and took out a transparent, long-necked bottle with a handle. Seeing that Hitaki 50% was carrying a poison bottle, seeing Heaven's secrets asked in surprise, "You're an archer. Why do you have this thing?" Hitaki 50% whispered, "It's for the warlocks in the guild." TSK. Hearing this, everyone clicked their tongues and sighed. As expected of a sweeping monk, the things he had could open a grocery store. After taking the bottle from Hitaki Wu Kai's hand, Wang Yu strode to the riverside, grabbed the handle of the bottle, and dipped it into the water. As a bottle that was specially used to store poison, it was immune to all poisons under the system's halo. Even the terrifying river water could not dissolve the bottle. With a gulp sound, Wang Yu pulled out the bottle again. It was filled to the brim with scarlet river water. "Damn, that works too. Nyogu, how did you come up with this?" Seeing the bottle in Wang Yu's hand, everyone immediately understood Wang Yu's idea. Wang Yu smiled bitterly. After being tricked by the system so many times, everyone's brain will go into reverse. Indeed, the reason why everyone did not think of this method was because they had been led into a misunderstanding by the system. Seeing that there was water in the river, everyone instinctively thought that the way to kill the boss was to drown it in the river, ignoring the fact that they could actually bring the river water in. This was the so-called reverse thinking. The reason why the system designers could fool the players was because they understood the player's psychology and set up such misconceptions in the game. With the river water, everyone felt more assured this time, and once again entered the castle, full of confidence. Unable to get rid of Wang Yu and the others, Tyren was anxiously pacing around the castle. Seeing that the four of them had returned, Tyren was overjoyed. "Ha, you guys have thought it through and want to be my slaves." Then Tyren raised his staff. His meaning was clear. If Wang Yu and the others dared to reject him, he would not hesitate to kill them. "Wait." Seeing Tyren's attitude, Wang Yu unhurriedly stood in front of the three of them and smiled. "You think it's too boring here, and we don't want to be your slaves, so I thought of a way to satisfy both sides." "Oh? Tell me about it." Tyren was slightly stunned when he heard this, and took the staff back. "Hee. The method is to let you be completely free." Wang Yu chuckled. As he spoke, he appeared in front of Tyren in a flash, grabbed the bottle in his hand, and threw it at him. Tyren was shocked by Wang Yu's sudden sneak attack, and hurriedly swung his staff to hit it. Smack! The fragile glass bottle was smashed into pieces by Tyren's staff. Splash! The river water in the bottle immediately sprayed down from midair, drenching Tyren's head in a shower of blood. Seeing the red liquid on his body, Tyren's pupils shrank, and his pale face revealed a terrified expression. "River water. Wang Yu smiled as he answered Tyren's last question before he died. Ah! Hearing Wang Yu's answer, Tyren let out a blood-curdling scream. Then, Tyren began to dissolve, and at the same time, pink smoke rose from his body. The HP bar on his head dropped bit by bit. Ugh! Everyone's scalp went numb at Tyren's tragic state. Chapter 1160. This time, he won't revive, right? Hataki 50% asked Wang Yu, while suppressing his disgust as he looked at Tyren, who had turned into a puddle of water. A girl's tolerance for such things was far inferior to a man's. If they weren't in the game, Hataki 50% would have vomited already. Crash! At this moment, there was the sound of something dropping, and a few shiny items appeared where Tyren had died. Looking at the items that Tyren had dropped, Wang Yu nodded with certainty. Probably not. In the system settings, only monsters would drop items when they died. Hence, a boss might not be alive even if it didn't drop items, but if it did, it was definitely dead. That's good. That's good. Everyone let out a long sigh of relief after receiving Wang Yu's affirmation. Meow. There's only one glass bottle, and no one wanted to see that disgusting scene again. Who's going to pick up the items that Tyren dropped? After calming himself down, Inside of Heaven's Secrets looked around and asked weakly. Tyren was a big boss, and it was a first kill, so the items he dropped would definitely be top-notch. It wasn't that Secret Insight didn't want to pick up the items, but that the puddle of liquid on the ground had yet to disperse, and no one dared to pick it up. Disgusting was one thing, but who knew if that thing was corrosive? It wouldn't be worth it if they got stuck in it for nothing. This Hataki Woo Woo Kai was no fool either. Naturally, Hataki Woo Woo Kai also had the thought of seeing through Heaven's Secrets. Seeing that Heaven's Secrets and Wang Yu were not moving, Hataki Woo Woo Kai also pulled Wang Yu, indicating that he should not go. Wang Yu turned to look at Hataki 50% and asked Secret Insight with a smile, "If I go to pick up the items, can I pick one first?" Secret Insight was slightly taken aback when he heard this, and then said matter-of-factly, "Of course not. Whatever you say, Nyoga." A normal player's personality was different from Wang Yu's, who didn't want to take credit for himself. Everyone distributed the equipment based on the individual's team contribution. Wang Yu was basically the only one who had helped them defeat Tyren. The only thing he had helped with was Hataki's broken bottle. Even if Wang Yu had taken all of the items, God's Secret wouldn't have any objections, let alone Wang Yu. This was the rule of the pugilistic world. Being able to see through the secrets of the heavens, he was still a tyrant. Naturally, he would not let something like this ruin his reputation. What's more, when Wang Yu entered the dungeon, he had to carry all three of them. When they were fighting the first two bosses, Wang Yu didn't take everything for himself. Now, he just made a very reasonable request. When playing a game, one had to put one's self in another's shoes. Seeing Wang Yu's selfless sacrifice left a good impression on God's Secret. Then I won't stand on ceremony. Wang Yu cupped his fists at God's Secret, then walked over to pick up the items that Tyren dropped. He then sent the attributes to the party channel. Tyren's notebook. Rare item, a notebook with messy handwriting. It's filled with cryptic language. I don't know what it's used for. Item background. Tyren's notebook. Wang Yu had seen something like a notebook before. Back then, Wang Yu had picked up the notebook of a blacksmith apprentice in the mines. It was a hidden subclass. With such a powerful background, Tyren's notebook should also have an extraordinary origin. Of course, Wang Yu, who had been baptized by the system's shamelessness, also knew that he couldn't make a decision on an unknown item. Tyren's old house was very old, so no one knew what was written in the notebook. It would be fine if it was some useful knowledge, but it would be very awkward if it was asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. So, Wang Yu raised the notebook and asked, "Does anyone know what this thing is?" This is a quest item," the three replied after looking at the notebook's attributes. The quest items in Rebirth had always been like this. They didn't have attributes, only strange introductions. "What's written in it?" Wang Yu asked curiously. Tyren was an NPC from the Dark Faction. The words he wrote were most likely in the Dark Faction's language. Well, God's Secret flipped open the notebook and looked at it for a while, then muttered, "I don't know. F***. Wang Yu snatched the notebook and said, "Why are you pretending if you don't know? Do you want it? If you want it, I'll get it to you." Then, Wang Yu handed the notebook to God's secret, and God's secret unpredictable. No. Seeing this, God's secret and God's secret both waved their hands and retreated. What a joke. Tyran had dropped so many items. Why did he want this random thing? Since no one wants it, I'll keep it for now. Wang Yu smiled and threw the notebook into his bag. The second item was a dagger. The material of the dagger seemed to be made of bone. It was completely black and had a lifelike skull on the hilt. Roar of the Undead, dagger, dark gold, attack, 300-400 mana, 300-400 plus 55 agility, plus 59 strength, plus 47 spirit Night Loner. Passive skill, stealth is strengthened by 20% Night Envoy. Passive skill, movement speed is increased by 20% while in Stealth Night Sorrow. Passive skill, attack target while in stealth is increased by 20% Night Servant. Active skill, summons an undead that inherits 60% of the user's attributes to assist in battle. Profession requirement, general level requirement, 60 item introduction. A defensive weapon that Necromancer Tyran has carried with him since he was young. It has followed Tyran for thousands of years and has been immersed in dark magic. It has an inexplicable affinity with dark faction players. Stealth, movement speed, and attack power are all important attributes for an assassin. Not only did this dagger strengthen these three attributes, but it also came with a summoning skill. Not only did it strengthen the user, it also made up for the assassin's weakness. Although this dagger was a general weapon, for an assassin, it was a godly weapon. Seeing the dagger in Wang Yu's hand, God's secret almost drooled. His eyes were filled with desire. Seeing God's secret's anxious expression, Wang Yu purposely said, "This dagger is not bad, and it's general. We can all use it." Hearing this, God's secret immediately panicked and said, "Nyo-gu, Uncle Nyo, you can't do this. A Grandmaster of Combat is a noble and honorable profession, and a wretched dagger doesn't match at all." Really? Wang Yu saw that God's secret was starting to talk about his profession and knew that this guy was really anxious. He was slightly happy and threw the dagger to God's secret. Then he lectured, "Since it doesn't match, I'll give it to you. In the future, you have to listen in Yogo, understand? Don't be so unreasonable." Got it. Clasping his dagger, all-seeing Heaven's secrets said gratefully, "Brother Ox, from today onwards, I'll follow you. Whoever dares to go against you is going against me, and also our pavilion of heavenly secrets." Seeing that God's secret was completely convinced, Wang Yu also knew that this guy would not dare to go against him in the later dungeons. So he smiled and said, "Don't be so exaggerated. Let's be friends and help each other." Chapter 1161. Making a friend in the game was definitely not a bad thing. Seeing Heaven's secret's personality was a bit arrogant, but he was alright in other aspects. Moreover, the two assassins in Xuanzhen were overflowing with wealth. They would not be interested in this item. Trading a dagger for a friend was not a bad deal. Receiving the dagger, seeing Heaven's secret was overjoyed. His face was full of smiles, and his smug expression made others want to beat him up. If Wang Yu wanted him to die, he would probably execute it without hesitation. Seeing Heaven's secret's expression, Wang Yu smiled and took out the third item. Grasp of Darkness, Staff, Epic Attack, 127-222 mana, 350-460 plus 55 Intelligence, plus 57 Spirit, plus 44 Vitality Dark Bloodline. Summon passive skill, all dark summoning magic proficiency, plus 1 dark bloodline. Poison passive skill, all dark poison magic proficiency, plus 1 dark bloodline. Curse passive skill, all dark curse magic proficiency, plus 1 dark blood spring. Active skill, consumes life force to transform into a blood spring. In the dark blood spring state, the player's movement speed is increased by 20%. During this period, the player cannot be selected as a target. Enemies above the blood spring will have their movement speed reduced by 40% and receive magic damage. Dark blood sacrifice. Consumes life force to perform a blood sacrifice to revive one summoned unit. Level requirement. 60 class requirement. Mage introduction. Archmage Tyran obtained the body of an ancient demon king by chance during his training in hell. Tyran used the demon king's arm bone and skull to forge this staff. He then stole 3 undead gems and embedded them into the staff, forging it into a godly weapon. The Dark Grasp has followed Tyran for 1,000 years and contains powerful dark energy. Epic skill. Energy shock. Passive skill. Automatically charges the staff when casting a spell. After charging, the staff will release all the dark energy stored in the Dark Grasp to attack the target, dealing powerful damage. Damn, it's an epic item. Seeing the staff in Wang Yu's hands, everyone's spirits rose. Epic equipment was a legendary item. In the 6 months since the game's launch, less than 100 pieces had been produced. Moreover, most of them were in the hands of professional experts. Ordinary players couldn't buy them, even if they had the money. Even though God's Secret was the boss of a guild, he was nowhere near the level of people like Blood Red Warflag. He had only heard of and seen existences of this level. As for a small fry like Hitaki, he had never imagined that he would one day see an epic weapon with his own eyes. Now that the divine artifact was right in front of them, one could imagine what they were feeling. However, after everyone browsed through the staff's attributes, they curled their lips in disappointment. It was as if he had been excited for a long time, only to find out that Wang Yu was holding a useless piece of trash in his hand. Although no one said anything, the expressions on their faces made it clear that they were saying, "You call this epic equipment?" In fact, the magic staff's attributes were very worthy of the title of epic equipment. After all, apart from being proficient in all types of spells, it also had an escape skill. It was also quite a powerful existence. However, the sad thing was that although it looked like it could be used by magicians on the surface, in reality, it was a typical warlock equipment. Moreover, it was a warlock equipment that strengthened the summoning element. At this stage of the game, warlock players were as rare as pandas. The number of warlocks who could use summoning magic could be counted on one hand. As a result, in the eyes of ordinary players, the 2 skills, summoning mastery and blood sacrifice, were completely superfluous. Although the other 2 skills, spell mastery, were very rare, compared to special effects such as cooldown reduction and casting enhancement, these additional basic attributes were not very popular. As for energy blast, it was really useless. As a control class, the damage output of a warlock was never important. Moreover, it was a random skill that needed to be recharged. The standard to evaluate a control class was stability. This kind of unstable factor that could steal aggro at any time could lead to a team wipe. In summary, this magic staff only had the Bloodspring skill that could be used. Its practicality could be said to be garbage to the extreme. Of course, this was only for ordinary players. If this magic staff fell into the hands of a warlock like Brother Chun, who could attack, deal damage, and could also use summoning magic, it would be a completely different concept. Seeing everyone's expression as if they had eaten a fly, Wang Yu smiled faintly and said, "I think this magic staff is not bad. I'll take it. Does anyone have any objections?" Take it, take it." Everyone waved their hands. Warlock items, no matter how good the attributes were, could not be sold for a high price. Moreover, this kind of garbage could at most be sold for a collection price. "Then I won't stand on ceremony." Wang Yu nodded and put the magic staff into his bag with a smile. As a 1,000-year-old demon, Tyran's collection was very rich. However, warlocks had always had relatively low requirements for equipment, and it was the same for Tyran. Apart from these few items, the rest were mostly poison-making materials and potions. These things were not very useful to other classes, so no one had a need for them. Thus, they all threw them to Wang Yu. It seemed that Wang Yu had now been designated as a garbage collector. Of course, the key was that Wang Yu contributed the most. These materials were, after all, drops from the boss, so they still had value. If they were given to others, everyone would be a little unconvinced. Only when they were given to Wang Yu would they be convinced. After dividing the loot, Wang Yu and the others glanced at the endless corridors of the castle and were about to enter the next boss. At this moment, the entire game suddenly shook. Boom, boom. Huge rocks from the top of the castle suddenly fell, sealing the castle's exit in the blink of an eye. Then, a muffled sound like thunder rang in everyone's ears. Who is it? Who killed Teacher Tyran? The loud sound was deafening. Even with Wang Yu's mental fortitude, he was shaken to the point where his head was buzzing. Fate's secret, and the others were even worse off. This roar seemed to be mixed with the power of deterrence. After the sound was heard, the three of them lost 1/5 of their health. At the same time, their stats plummeted. No, not good. Fate looked at his own stats and said in a panic, "It's draconic aura. My stats have dropped by 50%. This dragon is at least level 150. Level 150? Wang Yu couldn't help but be shocked. Wang Yu was also a perennial dungeon raider. He had cleared over 100 dungeons, so he was no stranger to the settings of dungeons. In the past, Wang Yu had encountered dungeons that had level differences as well. However, the difference was only around 20 levels at most. However, they hadn't even cleared half of the dungeon yet, and the next boss was already a level 150 dragon-type monster. There was an 80-level difference between the two. Just what kind of dungeon was this? Chapter 1162. The four were still in a state of shock. At the same time, a giant black dragon descended from the sky and landed in front of them. Boom! The giant dragon landed, and the castle shook from the impact. The strong wind pressure blew Secret of Heaven's Secret and the others to the foot of the wall. In order not to get killed by the giant dragon, Wang Yu also jumped to the edge of the castle and leaned his back against the wall. In the end, there was still a difference of 100 levels. This dragon didn't even deliberately attack them. Just its appearance alone was enough to intimidate everyone. Needless to say, the level 150 boss was a series of question marks in everyone's eyes. They didn't know anything about this giant dragon, but as long as they weren't idiots, they could guess that this fellow was most likely the legendary evil dragon Dominic. Tyrone's death clearly enraged Dominic. After entering the castle, Dominic looked around and roared again. Who was it? Who killed Teacher Tyrone? Fortunately, the effects of dragons might couldn't stack. Otherwise, Dominic would have been able to cause everyone's HP to plummet from such a long distance. Now that they were in the castle, listening to this stupid dragon's roar would definitely kill them. Even so, Dominic's powerful aura scared the hell out of Secret of Heaven's Secret and the others. They couldn't help but look at Wang Yu. Wang Yu was speechless for a moment. He stepped forward and said calmly, "It was me. You? You're not afraid of me?" Dominic was slightly taken aback when he saw Wang Yu step forward. The reason why Dominic was surprised wasn't because Wang Yu had the ability to kill Tyrone, but because his dragons might didn't seem to have any effect on Wang Yu. On the contrary, he had the urge to bow down and worship this human. Hearing Dominic's words, Wang Yu smiled slightly and said, "Why should I be afraid of you?" As a martial artist, Wang Yu's ambition was higher than the sky. This fellow even dared to make a move on the Dragon Emperor Dales, not to mention this little dragon. Besides, no matter how strong the boss in the game was, it was just a set of numbers. The so-called fear was just an effect simulated by the system. Wang Yu had the bloodline of the Dragon Emperor, and his bloodline was much higher than Dominic's. Of course, even the simulation effect wouldn't exist. Oomph. At this moment, Dominic also saw through Wang Yu's tricks and couldn't help but snort coldly. "Arrogant human. Don't think that you can be arrogant in front of me just because you have the bloodline of dragons. If I want to kill you, it'll be as easy as killing a bug." As he spoke, he flapped his wings, sending a gust of wind toward Wang Yu. Those who played dark magic were indeed unscrupulous. Dominic was a dragon, yet he dared to launch a sneak attack. Luckily, Wang Yu was alert and knew that Dominic was up to no good when he saw him raise his wings. He immediately dodged to the side and evaded Dominic's attack. Walala! The gust of wind blew against the rocks behind Wang Yu, turning them into a pile of dust that scattered with the wind. F***CK. Seeing this scene, everyone's eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. If he hadn't dodged that attack, Wang Yu would be dead for sure. What was even more frightening was that this was just a normal attack. If it had been a skill, the attack power would have been unimaginable. Seeing that he hadn't killed Wang Yu, Dominic tilted his huge head and revealed a surprised expression. He said in surprise, "Looks like you're quite strong. Since you've killed Tyren, you only have two choices now. 1. Become my slave and guard this place." Hearing this, Wang Yu said, "Cut the crap. Just say the second one. F***CK. Why are all the bosses in this dungeon the same? They want people to be slaves at the drop of a hat. Do all necromancers have this hobby? Just think about Chun Xiang's skills and equipment." Indeed, that was the case. Necromancers didn't kill easily. This could be considered an irony. But wasn't it a joke for a player to become an NPC slave? The boss of the dragons was Wang Yu's lackey. If Wang Yu became Dominic's slave, where would Dales put his face? The second choice? Dominic glanced at Wang Yu and sneered. The second choice is death. Death? Hearing Dominic's words, everyone laughed. What's so scary about death? It's not like we haven't died before. We have to thank you for killing us out of the dungeon. In your dreams. Dominic glanced at a corner of the castle. That's a resurrection point. If you don't agree, I'll block this place and kill you until you're level 0. F***CK. Everyone was shocked by Dominic's words. This boss is going against the heavens. He even knows how to kill until he's level 0. This is ridiculous. Death isn't scary, but killing until you're level 0 is a different story. Everyone's equipment and skills have a level limit. Killing until they're level 0 is a clean slate. They'll lose more than just EXP. I didn't expect a game program to have such a cruel setting. Seeing how tough Dominic's setting was, Wang Yu knew that with Dominic's IQ, he wouldn't be able to fool him. To clear the dungeon, there was no other way but to kill him. To deal with such a tough guy, it was best to strike first. At this thought, Wang Yu sent a message to God's secret. Attract his attention. Huh. Seeing Wang Yu's message, God's secret perked up and asked with a laugh, "Pardon me for asking, but what benefits do we get from being your slaves?" "Great," Dominic said proudly. "First of all, you can take all the treasures. Also, you can obtain eternal life." "That's not bad." Hitaki's eyes lit up when he heard there were treasures. "Idiot." God's secret slapped Hitaki's head and asked, "Then we can only stay in this castle from now on?" "That's right." Dominic nodded. "Then why are we still playing?" Just as Dominic and Heaven's secret were talking, Wang Yu took advantage of Dominic's distraction and leaped in front of him. She pushed off the ground with her staff and leaped into the air. Her feet stepped on Dominic's knees, and with a loud roar, she threw a punch at Dominic's chin. With Dominic's physique, it was obvious that he was a strength type and wouldn't be very agile. In addition, Wang Yu had launched a sneak attack. By the time he heard Wang Yu's voice, Wang Yu had already flown below his head. At this time, Dominic naturally couldn't dodge in time. Bang! With a muffled sound, Wang Yu's punch landed on Dominic's chin. -10, a pitiful damage number floated above Dominic's head. It couldn't be helped. There was almost 100 levels between them, and Dominic was in his dragon form and covered in scales. Wang Yu's punch couldn't even break through his defense. It was true that Wang Yu couldn't hurt Dominic, but Dominic was a dragon. How could this arrogant race tolerate being slapped in the face? "Lowly human, you dare launch a sneak attack on me?" Dominic was furious when he realized that he had been tricked. He roared and lowered his head, swinging his claws at his chin. Good. Seeing that Dominic had exposed the back of his neck, Wang Yu's eyes narrowed. She stepped on Dominic's shoulder and jumped onto Dominic's back agilely. She grabbed Dominic's reverse scale with her left hand and took out a dagger with her right hand, stabbing hard. Chapter 1163. More than one dragon had died in Wang Yu's hands. There was probably no one else in the entire game who had more experience in slaying dragons than Wang Yu. Dragons were huge, but their upper limbs were relatively short. The back of their neck was a place that they couldn't reach. Moreover, the reverse scale of a dragon's weakness was also on their neck. Therefore, when dealing with such a huge lizard As long as one jumped onto its back and held on tightly to its reverse scale, one would be halfway to success. Wang Yu's dagger easily pierced into the back of Dominic's neck. But as soon as the dagger entered his body, Wang Yu immediately felt that something was wrong. Even an ordinary person would feel some resistance after being stabbed, let alone a monster covered in scales like Dominic. But Dominic was like a pile of cotton. There was no resistance at all. As expected, Wang Yu's dagger didn't have any effect. It didn't even cause any damage. Dominic snorted in disdain. Lowly human, I'm immortal. Do you think you can hurt me? Hearing Dominic's words, Wang Yu finally reacted. Meow. The reverse scale was a living dragon's weakness. Dominic had long turned himself into an undead. Of course, it wouldn't be a good idea to deal with him based on his experience when he was alive. While Wang Yu was still in a daze, Dominic spread his arms and leaped into the air. He arched his neck and headed straight for the top of the castle. This old man was indeed cruel. In order to kill Wang Yu, he actually used such a method to harm others without benefiting himself. Wang Yu knew his limits. Naturally, he wouldn't compete with an undead dragon to see who could take more hits. Seeing that he was about to hit the roof, Wang Yu lay on Dominic's back and jumped off with all four limbs. Boom! Dominic slammed into the ceiling, causing rocks and dust to fall from the ceiling. The castle shook once more. Dominic hadn't lost a single drop of blood after such an impact. From this, it could be seen that it was impossible to kill him from behind. Of course, there was no such thing as an unkillable boss in the game. Even a fierce dragon like Dominic had to have a weakness. He just hadn't discovered it yet. Seeing that Wang Yu was still alive, Dominic did not hesitate. He opened his mouth and puffed out a thick cloud of black smoke. Other dragons breathed fire, but this guy breathed smoke. It seemed that although the undead dragon had an immortal body, it had lost the powerful ability to breathe. It was a little funny. But as ridiculous as it was, Wang Yu wouldn't dare to take it head-on even if the beast spat or sneezed, let alone spitting smoke. Wang Yu landed on the ground with eagle stomp. He rolled to the corner of the wall and used his shield to protect himself. Whoosh! The moment the smoke landed on the ground, there was an ear-piercing sound of melting. The rocks on the ground melted like ice cubes when they came into contact with the smoke. Damn it! This smoke is actually poisonous. Shortly after, the screams of the three Divine Insight players rang out. Wang Yu looked over and saw that the three who came into contact with the smoke were instantly corroded into skeletons. They turned into a streak of white light and flew back to the safe zone. Fortunately, Wang Yu's shield attributes were extremely high, and he was able to block all the poisonous smoke. By then, Dominic was already charging down at Wang Yu from the sky. Sensing the murderous intent, Wang Yu looked up abruptly. Dominic's huge chin was already above Wang Yu. Wang Yu tensed up when he saw Dominic's chin. He stood up abruptly and leaped up the wall. One man and one dragon, one going up and one going down, soon met each other's eyes. Wang Yu did not panic. He thrust his right hand forward and switched his weapon to a long sword, stabbing at Dominic's huge eyes. Just now, Wang Yu's fist had landed on Dominic's chin and dealt 10 damage. It was obvious that Dominic's weak spot was on his face. The only part of Dominic's face that was not covered by scales was his eyes. As for whether or not it was a vital spot, that was up to the heavens. It was free to try anyway. Wang Yu lowered his hand and accurately stabbed his long sword into Dominic's eye. -111245. A huge damage number popped up. Wang Yu twisted his right wrist and stabbed his long sword into Dominic's eye socket. -221115. Another huge damage number popped up. Roar! Feeling the pain, Dominic shook his head and tried to dodge, but Wang Yu didn't even look and stabbed Dominic's eye again with the back of her hand. It couldn't be helped. Dominic's eyes were big, and with Wang Yu's skills, there was no reason he couldn't hit such a large target at such a close distance. Dominic, who had been stabbed repeatedly in the eye by Wang Yu, was clearly stunned. Without a word, he opened his mouth and let out another breath. Wang Yu knew how powerful Dominic's breath was. Shocked, he jumped behind Dominic's head and grabbed it with one hand. He switched his long sword to a dagger with the other, intending to continue attacking Dominic's eyes from behind. Before Wang Yu's dagger could land, Dominic hurriedly landed on the ground and threw Wang Yu away. At the same time, Dominic's body shrank rapidly. By the time Wang Yu quick recovered and landed on the ground, Dominic had turned from a giant dragon into a skinny, pale-faced, middle-aged man. To be honest, Dominic did look a little like a necromancer in his human form, just that his appearance was a little scary. Dominic's expression was hideous. The eyeballs in his eye sockets had turned into soul fire, churning violently. He was clearly furious. Dominic pointed his bone staff at Wang Yu. His black robe fluttered, even though there was no wind. He said with a sinister expression, "Lowly soul, how dare you anger the great death overlord, Dominic? Your crimes are unforgivable. Undead bone rain." Following Dominic's angry chant, the entire castle was suddenly surrounded by a black cloud. At the same time, a dense swarm of bone spears shot from all directions. There were too many of them to count. In such a narrow space, there was no way for Wang Yu to escape from the AoE magic. In the blink of an eye, he was covered in bone spears. Bang, 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 bang. The bone spears were too dense and came from different directions. No matter how skilled Wang Yu was, there was still a limit. Faced with this kind of magic, Wang Yu pulled back and raised a shield. He twisted and turned, but only managed to protect his head, heart, and other vital parts. As for the other parts of his body, they were full of holes, and his HP was plummeting. Only now did Wang Yu realize how strong a level 150 boss was. Chapter 1164. Martial arts practitioners often said that a single person's strength could defeat 1,000. This meant that no matter how exquisite one's moves were, they would be powerless in the face of an absolute difference in strength. A level difference of 90 was quite terrifying. If his opponent was a brainless level 150 monster, Wang Yu might still have a chance of winning. However, an existence like Dominic was already close to a legendary boss. This difference in strength was not something that could be easily made up for, no matter how good one's mechanical skills were. Such a large-scale AoE skill did not deal much damage, but could not overcome the level difference of 90. The defense of Wang Yu's superb equipment was slightly weaker under Dominic's attack. Poof! After being hit several times, Wang Yu's HP instantly dropped to 30%. He activated his psychic barrier, and the invincibility effect repelled the bone spears around Wang Yu. Wang Yu took the opportunity to open his backpack and equipped the Heart of Immortality. Wang Yu did not believe that this spell could last for another 15 seconds. However, at this moment, a golden token appeared in front of Wang Yu. Seeing the golden token, Wang Yu's eyes lit up, and he quickly used it. As Wang Yu's psychic barrier shattered, the space beside Wang Yu was torn apart by a pair of golden dragon claws. Under the powerful magical wave, Dominic's deathbone rain was forcibly stopped. Puffed. Dominic's body trembled, and he spat out a mouthful of black liquid. His already pale face became even uglier. At that moment, a dragon claw reached out to grab Wang Yu. But just as it was about to grab Wang Yu, the golden dragon claw suddenly stopped and retracted. Then a huge golden dragon head reached out from the spatial rift and said with a face full of disdain, "You again? What do you want?" It turned out that the token Wang Yu had just taken out was actually the Dragon Emperor's token. Dragon Emperor Dales was a powerhouse who had the ability to transcend space. He could capture anyone who used the token and bring them to his side at any time. In theory, the Instance Dungeon's mirror dimension was useless. However, along the way, Wang Yu noticed that all the bosses that died turned into white light. This was exactly the same as in the overworld. Because of this, Wang Yu also realized that the so-called challenge was a special scene of the main world and not a mirror dimension. Therefore, this dungeon was not a one-way trip. As long as there was a directional teleportation tool, everyone could leave. Of course, a powerhouse like Dragon Emperor Dales could come and go as he pleased. Dragon Emperor? Seeing the spatial crack and the golden dragon head in it, Dominic's body trembled. He hurriedly prostrated on the ground, the soul fire in his eye sockets trembling uncontrollably. Clearly, the fear between NPCs was not simulated by the system. It was a real deterrence from a superior to a subordinate. A proud dragon like Dragon Emperor Dales naturally would not care about a dirty undead. He ignored Dominic's prostrations and continued to yell at Wang Yu. Do you need anything? Don't bother me if there's nothing. Hey, how can you talk like that? Wang Yu pointed at the room full of jewels and said, there are so many treasures here. I wanted to ask if you wanted them, but look at your attitude. Treasures? Dales looked in the direction Wang Yu was pointing at. His eyes almost popped out as he drooled and nodded at Wang Yu excitedly. Good brother, I really did not misjudge you. With that, Dales transformed into a brawny man and jumped into the castle through the spatial crack. Dominic almost cried when he saw Dales being dragged into the castle by Wang Yu. He knew Dales' style. The jewels in this castle were probably going to have a new owner. After Dales jumped into the castle, he immediately pounced on the jewels. At this time, Wang Yu hurriedly pulled Dales back. What's the rush? There's something else. Huh? Dales laughed awkwardly. Nyoga, what's the matter? Say it. As your good brother, your matters are my matters. Your jewels are my jewels. As expected, the higher the level of a boss, the more shameless he was. Just now, Dales was ignoring Wang Yu. Now that he saw the jewels, he also remembered that he was actually Wang Yu's contracted follower. That's more like it. Wang Yu nodded. Actually, these jewels aren't mine yet. It doesn't matter. Dales waved his hand and said boldly, tell me whose these jewels are. I'll kill him, and these jewels will be yours. What's yours is mine. Dales's words shocked Wang Yu. This bastard was really a dragon with no morals. It was one thing for him to kill people and steal their jewels so casually, but for what he said, this bastard wanted him to be the scapegoat for stealing. What the hell was this? Dominic was trembling in fear. He wanted to cry, but had no tears. Damn, his life wasn't his anymore. However, Wang Yu had called Dales over to help him kill Dominic. At this time, he couldn't be bothered to correct Dales's morals. Hence, Wang Yu pointed at Dominic and said, these jewels are his. He even wants me to be his slave. With our relationship, do you think I can be his slave? What? Be his slave? Hearing Wang Yu's words, Dales's expression changed instantly. One had to know that Dales's current identity was Wang Yu's follower. If Wang Yu became Dominic's slave, wouldn't Dales be the third grandson? In any case, Dales was one of the strongest players in the game. He had no choice but to be Wang Yu's follower. How could he tolerate someone so stupid as to make him the third grandson? As soon as he finished speaking, Dales glared at him. Dominic was a dragon's. How could he stand being glared at by the boss of the dragons, Dales? He plopped to the ground and said in a trembling voice, your majesty, it's me, Dominic. Don't you recognize me? Dominic? Dales's expression softened. He looked Dominic up and down, then scratched his head and said, I haven't seen you in a few thousand years. How did you become like this? In the minds of the dragons, all things were inferior. Even the titans could not be compared with them. It could be said that a dignified dragon had become a filthy undead, which could be said to be a disgraceful thing. However, Dales's thoughts were more open when he traveled the continent with a martial god back then. Seeing Dominic's behavior, he only felt a little sorry for his people's depravity. Facing Dales's question, Dominic said in a trembling voice, I was just addicted to knowledge and couldn't extricate myself. As long as your majesty let me go, I'm willing to turn over a new leaf. Oh, Dales narrowed his eyes and nodded slightly. What about these jewels? Chapter 1165. Hearing that, Dales rubbed his chin. Although his attitude was ambiguous, even a fool could tell that this old thing was very satisfied. Wang Yu quickly asked, then what do you say about this dungeon? Does it count as clearing? Dominic glared at Wang Yu and snorted coldly. His attitude was self-evident. Dragons had always bullied the weak and feared the strong. Oh no, they respected the strong. Wang Yu was almost turned into a beef kebab by Dominic, so Dominic naturally did not think much of Wang Yu. If not for Dales's presence, Dominic probably would not even bother to snort. Wang Yu was speechless at the NPC's disdain. He poked Dales and said loudly, "Looks like he's not happy. Let's just kill him so I can clear this dungeon." After hanging out with Chuanjin for so long, Wang Yu was now full of evil tricks. Just now, he was a fox pretending to be a tiger, and now he was bluffing. Dales was also very smart. He naturally understood that Wang Yu was just trying to intimidate Dominic. Dales and Wang Yu were not even friends. In Dales's eyes, Wang Yu's position was naturally far inferior to these jewels. At this time, Dales was also happy to watch the joke. However, he still had to put on a show. So, Dales looked at the jewels all over the castle, then at Wang Yu, and pretended to be in a difficult position. "Boss, you're making things very difficult for me." "Difficult, is it?" Wang Yu put on an offensive stance and said to Dales, "You're making things difficult for me. I'm going to make a move." "You can't beat me." Dales laughed. "I know," Wang Yu said calmly. "I'll ram my head into you and die. Our lives for each other's." Hearing this, Dales could not help but shudder. Meow. A player's life was worthless. A god-level NPC like Dales only had one life. How could he exchange it with Wang Yu? At the thought of this, Dales hurriedly glared at Dominic sternly. "Open your eyes and look carefully. You have to listen to what he says, understand? Otherwise, I'll have to do business." Although Dominic was unconvinced, he knew that Dales was ruthless and ruthless. In the face of such an expert, he could only helplessly take out a black token and hand it to Wang Yu. Tisk. Seeing how arrogant and domineering Dales was, teaming up with Wang Yu to extort Dominic into bankruptcy in just a few words, the trio from Divine Insight were stunned. They asked in the channel, "Who is this **TTY guy? Why are you so arrogant?" "Dragon Emperor." Wang Yu replied calmly as he accepted Dominic's token. Seeing Heaven's Secret and the others were stunned once more when they heard this. At the same time, the four of them received a system notification. "Your party has completed the quest Dominic's challenge. Obtain the special tool, Evil Dragon's Lair Key. Obtained experience, reputation, honor." Following the system notification, the four of them simultaneously lit up with the light of leveling up. As a large-scale instance dungeon, the Evil Dragon's Lair was far more abundant than Wang Yu had imagined. Although their completion rate was not high and they had to cheat in order to clear the instance dungeon, the EXP they received was enough for them to level up. This was especially true for Wang Yu. After clearing the instance dungeon, he had finally reached level 60. Under the three's eager gazes, Wang Yu excitedly displayed the attributes of the token Dominic had given him. Evil Dragon's Lair Key, precious item, can be used to open the special instance dungeon Evil Dragon's Lair. Initiator will receive 5% of the instance dungeon's rewards. Item owner, Iron Ox. Heaven's secrets are hard to fathom. Ataki 50/50 Divine Insight. As previously mentioned, the camp dungeons that Dominic and Wang Yu had opened were similar in nature. The only difference was the timing. The final reward was also similar. Both were the opening of a new instance dungeon, and the opening party would receive the rewards. However, the Evil Dragon's Lair was slightly more profitable. Moreover, the instance dungeon could only be opened with the key. Of course, it did not make much of a difference whether they opened it or not. After all, the difficulty of this instance dungeon was definitely not something current players could clear. Is this it? Seeing the attributes of the Evil Dragon's Lair key, Wang Yu and the others were a little dazed. A share of the instance dungeon's rewards was indeed a good reward, but the reward had to be compared. This reward clearly did not match the difficulty of the instance dungeon. They had already encountered a level 150 boss, and this was all they got? Dominic coldly snorted. "What else do you want? Divine weapon, divine skill. Give us whatever you want. We don't mind having more," Wang Yu said shamelessly. Dominic disdainfully said, "Why should I?" Wang Yu was stunned by Dominic's words. He turned to look at Dales. Dales shrugged. "I have no choice. You guys didn't personally defeat him. You're already doing me a favor by clearing this instance dungeon. If you force me to give you equipment, that's cheating. Even if I don't kill him, the system will destroy him. Is that so? Wang Yu nodded. It seemed that no matter how amazing Dales was, he could only help so much. He could not break the rules. Otherwise, with Dales around, wouldn't he be able to kill a god? It was a game. Balance was the most important thing. Things that were unbalanced would naturally be balanced. It was already good enough that they could clear this instance dungeon. How could they ask for more? Wang Yu was not an insatiable person. Naturally, he would not force Dales to kill Dominic. Is there anything else? Dales said to Wang Yu. If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving. Don't bother me in the future. I won't see you again. With that, Dales stretched out his hand and drew a line in the air. He tore open a hole in space and threw Dominic in. Since they had cleared the evil dragon's lair, Dominic was technically dead. If he wanted to live, he had to drag out an ignoble existence. Being taken away by Dales was a good ending. Wait! Seeing that Dales was about to leave, Wang Yu hurriedly shouted, "What else do you want?" Dales asked impatiently. "Send us to Salat." 2 flowers bloomed, and each had its own branch. While Wang Yu and the others were risking their lives in the evil dragon's lair, Chuanjin's group had already chased them all the way to Salat City. As the saying went, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Rat's strategic level was on par with Wuji. From the beginning of the ambush on Chuanjin, Rat and the others had always held the initiative. During this period, although the Quanjin sect successfully counterattacked, as the one who took the initiative to attack, Rat and his group knew the trump cards of the Quanjin sect. The Quanjin sect didn't know how many trump cards Rat had hidden. For example, the existence of Thousand Wave Temple was something that Chuanjin did not know. When the 12 constellations fled towards Salat, Rat had already expected that since the Netherworld King's experts and mercenaries were trapped in Yuhuicheng, and since Chuanjin and the others did not know of the existence of Thousand Wave Temple, they would definitely come to kill them. Thus, when Rat led the others back, he had already set up an ambush. Chapter 1166. Chuanjin always lived by the principle of taking revenge. Moreover, being stabbed in the back by someone from the 12 Stars was something they couldn't tolerate. With the help of the Blood Alliance players, the whereabouts of the 12 Stars were all within the grasp of the Quanjin sect. The people of the Quanjin sect followed the coordinates and entered Salat City. In Rebirth, the movement speed of the players of each class was different due to the growth of their agility stat. Therefore, the more complete a team was, the lower their mobility. Agility players who could run fast had to take care of the slower ones. However, the people from the Quanjin sect had cloaks on them, and they were all very good at running. In terms of mobility, there were only a handful of teams in the entire game, including professional players, that could compare to the Quanjin sect. The 12 Stars were all pro players. Although they were strong, they didn't do robbing, so their mobility was very common. After all, the main purpose of expert teams was to compete and defeat their enemies. They weren't like Chuanjin, who were forced to run all over the place. As they got closer and closer to the 12 Stars, Chuanjin became more and more excited. This wasn't because they were about to kill their enemies with their own hands. The reason why everyone was so excited was because their opponent was none other than the famous 12 constellations. The 12 Stars had been famous for a long time and had outstanding performances in the Pro League. Although they were retired and weren't as strong as before, they were still experts. The people from the Quanjin sect were also famous gangsters in the gaming world. Other than having the attribute of stirring shit up, their strength was also remarkable. Compared to the current 12 constellations, they could be considered to be on par. One had to know that Chuanjin had also signed up to participate in the Pro League this time. The difference between a grassroots team and a pro player had always been relatively obvious. Retired pro players represented the lower limit of a pro player's skill. To be able to fight with these 12 Stars experts, not only could they train their skills, but they could also prove whether or not they had the qualifications to participate in the Pro League. If they couldn't even beat this group of retired players, then even if they went to the Pro League, they would probably be crushed. Although Wang Yu's thighs were thick enough, the others had their own pride. How could they be the kind of people who would suck up to others and win without doing anything? With the pro league around the corner, the 12 stars could be said to be a touchstone for Chuanjin. They were all playing games. Who would be willing to be told that they couldn't even beat others in games? However, just as everyone was close to the coordinates of the 12 stars, Wuji suddenly exclaimed, "Not good. We've been tricked." Hearing Wuji's words, everyone was stunned. Then they asked Wuji what's wrong. Wuji furrowed his brows and pointed at the surroundings. "Look around." Environment? Hearing this, everyone hurriedly looked around, and when they saw the scene around them, they were immediately shocked. Just now, the group of people only cared about looking at the coordinates and completely ignored the changes in the scenery around them. At this time, the place where Chuanjin was located was surrounded by houses and shops, and the streets were very narrow. In particular, the coordinates of the 12 stars were actually in a small alley not far away from them. It was a F*King standard ambush scene. The people of Chuanjin had tricked countless people, and they were even more proficient in the use of the scenery. They had used this kind of terrain for ambushes countless times, so naturally, they could see the trick at a glance. Retreat. Wuji was also a decisive person and immediately gave the order to retreat. However, just as everyone was about to turn around, suddenly, a voice came from not far away. "Huh, Boss Wuji, since you're here, why are you in such a hurry to leave?" Hearing this, everyone looked towards the direction of the voice and saw an assassin with a dagger hanging from his waist, looking at them with a smile. It's Rat. Chuanjin had faced the 12 stars head-on before, so they were no strangers to the 12 stars. They immediately recognized the leader of the 12 stars. "Not bad," Rat said faintly. "Boss Wuji is very capable. You can easily make us suffer heavy losses, and now you've chased us all the way to Salat. You're indeed skilled and bold. You flatter me." Hearing this, Wuji said politely, "Brother Rat is not bad either. You almost killed Chuanjin several times, as expected of the legendary anticipating the enemy." While the two of them were flattering each other, Wuji sent a message in the channel. "Ignore him, everyone retreat." Following that, Wuji pointed his staff backward, and a white light covered Lao air. Second brother opened his shield to protect Chuanjin, and everyone quickly retreated. However, before the people of Chuanjin could take a few steps, a voice suddenly came from the other side. "Everyone, isn't a little unkind to leave without saying goodbye?" At the same time, Tiger appeared behind Chuanjin with Fifth Dragon and a few others. They raised their shields and sealed off the path of retreat for Chuanjin. Lao air snorted coldly. "We of Chuanjin can come and go as we please. Who can stop us? Everyone, follow me closely." After saying that, Lao air called out to the others. With his shield in front of him, he directly rammed forward. "With just you?" Hearing this, Tiger smiled contemptuously. He also lowered his head and crouched down. He aimed at the charging Lao air and used charge. Warriors had always been the most exciting class in the game, and Shield Warriors were even more heavyweight players. Although the PK between these heavyweight classes was far less technical and entertaining than Grandmasters of Combat and Assassins and other agility classes, the most primitive clash of strength made the visual effect even more terrifying. Boom! With a loud noise, the two muscular men collided together. For a moment, everyone's ears were ringing from the sound of their shields colliding. Both Lao air and Tiger were also knocked back a few steps by the other party. The two of them looked at each other in surprise and said in their hearts, "What a strong guy." Tiger was a real professional level expert. After retiring for so long, even if his strength had declined, it was only in terms of reaction and operation. However, Shield Warriors played a head-on game. The maneuverability of two Shield Warriors in PK was not high. Moreover, Tiger's equipment was equipped by the Tycoon world with a lot of money. Now, he was evenly matched with an unknown newcomer in Chuanjin. Could it be that he couldn't hold his sword anymore? Lao air's surprise at this time was not much less than Tiger's. Lao air's equipment was now among the top experts. The shield in his hand was also an artifact level. Moreover, Air was now 3 levels higher than Tiger. With the artifact in hand and the level suppression, he was only evenly matched with Tiger. In the end, he was a professional level player. He really had some skills. Just as the two shield bearers were shocked and looked at each other with philosophical gazes, the tiger-bodied warrior, Old Cow, pounced toward the people from Quan Jin's sect without saying a word. Upon seeing this, Bao San unsheathed his big sword and charged forward. At the same time, Fifth Dragon, who was behind Tiger, moved and activated stealth. Chapter 1167. Seeing that the opposing team's assassin had disappeared, the Chuanjin players hurriedly regrouped. Even Wuji quickly returned to the team and stood with his teammates behind Air. By then, Bao San and Old Cow had already started fighting. They were both Awakened-level experts. One was a retired professional player, while the other was an outstanding ordinary player. In terms of mechanics, the retired Old Cow had the upper hand. In terms of equipment, skills, and level, Bao San was slightly better. In terms of overall strength, there was not much difference between the two. Old Cow used charge and was blocked by Bao San. He immediately activated Whirlwind Slash and swung his two-handed sword at Bao San like a windmill. Seeing that Bao San was about to be killed on the spot, Bao San lowered his center of gravity and used Triple Slash, rushing toward Old Cow's sword. Triple Slash could not be attacked while it was in a teleportation state. Therefore, Bao San rushed in front of Old Cow and kicked Old Cow's thigh, interrupting Old Cow's Whirlwind Slash. Then, Bao San aimed at Old Cow and used Upward Slash. Upward Slash was a basic skill for warriors. Its damage was not high, but it had a knock-up effect. When players were PvP, knock-up was a very useful control effect. Once the target was knocked into the air, they would temporarily lose the ability to fight back, and the attacker could take the opportunity to cast all kinds of ultimate skills. However, as a professional player, Old Cow was naturally battle-hardened. How could he be knocked into the air so easily like an ordinary player? When Bao San interrupted his Whirlwind Slash, Old Cow had already predicted Bao San's next move. So, he smoothly raised his sword in front of his chest and used guard. Duong! The two swords clashed, producing an ear-piercing sound. Bao San's skill was blocked, and his body slightly stiffened. At the same time, the old bull retaliated with a tooth for a tooth, and also used an uppercut. When experts fought, they usually tricked their opponent into using skills to exhaust their opponent's cooldown. Then, they would wait for their opponent to use all their cards before dealing a fatal blow. Therefore, the battles between experts were basically all about probing each other's strength before the final move would determine the victor. This was the most fundamental difference between PvP and PvE. Bao San's first move gave Old Cow a chance. After this upward slash hit Bao San, there would definitely be a continuous stream of skills. At that time, even if Bao San did not die, he would still lose a layer of skin. However, before the Old Cow could succeed, he heard a thunderous roar and a thick bolt of lightning fell from the sky, landing on top of the Old Cow's head. In an instant, the old bull was struck by lightning on the outside and burned on the inside. Fortunately, Old Cow had a full set of top-grade equipment, so he didn't die. At the same time, Mingdu, who was behind Bao San, exclaimed, F***CK? You didn't die after taking a hit from me? Are you a shield warrior or a weapon warrior? With Mingdu's magic damage, after taking a hit from Mingdu, the Old Cow was not far from death. Suddenly, he was hit by lightning. Naturally, Old Cow was furious. He glared at Mingdu and scolded, I'm your daddy. Poor Old Cow. Just as the word daddy left his mouth, Bao San seized the opportunity and used a set of powerful skills on him. He passed away with a look of resentment in his eyes. Mother ***, kill that shameless bastard. Seeing that Old Cow was killed by Mingdu's sneak attack, the members of the 12 constellations were stunned. All their aggro was focused on Mingdu. The archers and sorcerers all focused their firepower on Mingdu. Yang Na and Exquisite Dream were not to be outdone either. The two of them shot arrows at the sorcerers. Yang Na's skill was not weak. However, she was in manual mode, so her aim was not good. Exquisite Dream's aim was good, but her attack was not enough. The sorcerer bunny girl was not weak. She moved a few times and crouched behind a shield warrior. With Tiger and Yin Lao Air facing each other, she blocked the vision of the two archers. However, Bunny Sis's magic was also stopped. Although Yang Na and Yi Tianyun didn't manage to kill her, they did manage to pin her down for a while. Mingdo also teleported behind Yin Tianyun's shield and imitated Yin Tianyun's actions. However, Mingdu jumped out of the team's formation. Mingdu landed. Just as he was about to catch his breath, he saw a figure appear behind Mingdu. The assassin had a long face and a mustache. Who else could it be but Fifth Dragon? As the chief assassin of the 12 constellations, Fifth Dragon's attacks were absolutely clean. The reason why he'd been beaten so badly by Chuanjin was because he had picked the wrong target. Wang Yu and Yang Na. These two non-humans were not people he could touch. Mingdo was just an ordinary person who was more ruthless. He couldn't be compared to a martial artist. The moment Qinlong appeared, he immediately slit Mingdo's throat. He didn't even give Wuji a chance to heal him. After killing Mingdu, Fifth Dragon did not say anything. He stabbed Yin Lao Air in the back with his knife. At this time, it depended on the tacit understanding between the team. If it was an ordinary shield warrior, the assassin would definitely turn back at this time. However, in a team battle between experts, shield warriors could not easily expose their back to the enemy. Otherwise, the team would be wiped out in a matter of minutes. The reason why Qinlong had chosen to attack Old Yin was to make him turn back. His intentions were definitely sinister. Of course, Yin Lao Air was not the kind of person who would easily fall into a trap. He chose to trust his teammates without hesitation. Before Fifth Dragon's dagger arrived, a circle appeared under Yin Lao Air's feet. It was Soaring Spring's dark barrier. Seeing this, Fifth Dragon hurriedly flipped back out of the range of the barrier. To place one's pride flew over and instantly killed Fifth Dragon. Since Fifth Dragon dared to charge into the enemy's formation alone, he was naturally prepared to die. Before he died, he slapped the ground and threw down a trap. To place one's pride landed on the ground. Pata! The trap was triggered. To place one's pride was nailed to the ground. Then, an arrow flew over and turned him into a white light. At almost the same time, Baiming Yoyu and Ming Jian appeared in the enemy's formation. Each of them took care of one of the 12 constellations' experts. The people of the 12 constellations rushed forward and hacked Ming Jian Daoxue to death. Yu Yu of the Northern Sea used the Earth evasion technique to escape. Whether it was Chuanjin or 12 constellations, both sides were top experts apart from the experts in the pro circle. Moreover, they were both veteran teams with the best team compositions. So whether it was in terms of individual strength or team coordination, these two teams were the best in the game. It could be said that they were evenly matched. Back and forth, you kill me, I kill you. The battle was quite bitter. Chuanjin had played the game for a long time, but this was the first time they had suffered such heavy casualties. Not only were Ming Jian and to place one's pride killed, even a veteran like Mingdu had his throat slit. Chapter 1168. The only fortunate thing was that the 12 stars had 2 more people than Chuanjin, so they didn't lose any advantage. As everyone knew, in PvP, whether it was being pressed down on the ground or being trampled on, it wasn't the most satisfying thing. Only when you met an opponent of similar skill level and fought for 300 rounds with all your might, and then shouted, "That's great." Whether you win or lose, that was one of life's greatest joys. These fellows from the Quanjin sect were a bunch of weirdos who did whatever they wanted. Ever since they met Wang Yu, this was the first time they had encountered such a hardy battle. After the retirement of the 12 stars, they were lonely at the top and had never met a worthy opponent. Now that they were facing such an opponent, they fought passionately and threw out all kinds of trump cards. The trump cards of these experts were definitely extremely dangerous. After the battle, only Wuji and Chun Xiang were left in Chuanjin, and Rat was the only one left in the 12 stars. From the looks of the survivors, the Quan Jun sect was outnumbered and had the upper hand. However, the one who survived was an assassin with an extremely high attack power. The Quan Jin sect only had 2 magic professions left, which pulled the score back to a certain extent. PvP always had a lot of surprises. As long as the winner and the loser hadn't been decided, no conclusion could be made. Seeing that Xuanjin still had 2 weak cloth armor classes, Rat didn't continue to attack. Instead, he activated stealth and ran out of Wuji and Chun Xiang's attack range. When Wuji and Chun Xiang saw Rat disappear, they hurriedly raised their staffs with their backs against each other. One condensed Holy Flame, while the other condensed Dark Barrier to prevent Rat from ambushing them. At this moment, Rat sneered and appeared in the distance. He said with a face full of longing, "Xuanjin, you really live up to your name. I haven't had this much fun in a long time." Hee. Wuji laughed and said in the same tone, "Same to you. The 12 stars are indeed pro-level experts. This time, Xuanjin was lucky enough to win. I hope we can fight again next time." Brother Wuji is right. Rat faintly smiled, then changed the topic and said, "However, the 12 constellations, still have to support our families, so we can't be like the Xuanjin. It is truly regrettable. However, if you insist on saying that the Xuanjin is slightly better, then I don't dare to agree." "Oh." Wuji raised his eyebrows and asked, "So, you think you can beat both of us?" There was no need to talk about Wuji's strength. He was just a cleric. No matter how amazing his mechanics were, he was still just a support class. However, Chun Xiang was different. This old bastard was full of tricks, and his strength was unfathomable. Throughout Xuanjin, aside from Wang Yu and Yang Na, no one dared to pat their chest and say that they could beat Chun Xiang. It was true that Rat was resourceful, but in terms of strength, he was only at the middle level in the 12 constellations. Who gave him the confidence to say that he could beat the 2 old foxes of Xuanjin? I don't dare. Rat waved his hand and said, "We have seen the strength of the 2 of you just now. However, no matter how strong you 2 are, can you fight 100 people?" As he spoke, Rat smiled sinisterly. Suddenly, hundreds of players came out from the streets and alleys. These players were all female beastmen. Each and every one of them had ferocious looks, but their bodies were surging like waves. They had the face of a devil and the figure of a devil. It was a unique characteristic. Everyone wielded their weapons and surrounded Wuji and Li Wuji tightly. Seeing this, Wuji said indifferently, Brother Rat is too polite. How can we enjoy so many girls? You should keep them for yourself." Rat smiled and asked indifferently, "Boss Wuji, I admit that I'm not as good as you in terms of words, but in terms of intelligence, how about it? Between the 2 of us, who is more skilled?" Rat and Wuji were both inept strategists in the team. They were known for relying on their intelligence to make a living. Since the others had already determined the winner, Rat naturally wanted to compete with Wuji. If Wuji admitted defeat, in Rat's heart, it would be better than stabbing Wuji to death 100 times. Wuji was also a very arrogant person. He valued intelligence more than anything else. Facing Rat's question, Wuji looked at the surrounding beastmen and said, "Not to be outdone, if we are comparing hiding under a woman's crotch and dealing damage, then I am indeed not as good as you. Come, kill me." Rat smiled and said, "Boss Wuji, are you mistaken? I brought people to ambush you, but in the end, only the 2 of you were left. I didn't bring people to kill you alone." "I know." Wuji spread his hands and said, "Didn't you just want to stall us?" Experts like the Xuanjin sect weren't the only ones in the game, but they were the only ones in the game who were able to create chaos wherever they went with the power of just a few people. Moreover, they were also the only ones who were able to cause chaos wherever they went. The reason for this was mainly because besides Wang Yu, the BUG, Xuanjin also had Wuji, the leader, and Chun Xiang, the old ghost. All the hardcore players in the online gaming circle knew that these 2 guys were a team when they first started playing the game. These 2 guys were full of evil tricks. From then on, They caused trouble everywhere and were not liked by others. If Chuanjin did not have these two people, they would be a group of powerful fighters. Unless they were all martial arts masters like Wang Yu, who could fight 100 people alone, otherwise, no matter how they jumped up and down, they would not be able to cause any trouble in front of a guild. Rat dragged Wuji and Chun Xiang here. There was no doubt that he wanted to cut off Chuanjin's head. If the advantage was too obvious, it would be a weakness. After all, he was a professional-level expert. From the beginning, Rat had targeted the two major weaknesses of Chuanjin. Now that Wang Yu was trapped in the instance dungeon and there was no one to give advice, Chuanjin would be a group of dragons without a leader. Wouldn't they be slaughtered by others? That's right. Rat nodded and said, I can take away Chuanjin's weapon, Wang Yu, and then cut off their heads, Chun Ji and Chun Xiang. What's the use of having strong limbs? With so many of us here, you can't even commit suicide. Am I better than you? Huh. Wuji laughed and said, You are very smart, but what do you mean by better? Don't you know that Chuanjin's head can grow back at any time? Rat was stunned hearing this. However, at this moment, Chun Xiang took a step back and leaned on Wuji's back. Then, a light burst out from Wuji's body. Boom! After a loud bang, both Wuji and Chun Xiang disappeared on the spot. What is this? The Orc players were dumbfounded when they saw this scene. The players of the Dark faction had never seen such a strange skill. Chapter 1169. Because Wuji kicked Chun Xiang out of the team before he self-destructed, Chun Xiang, who was right next to Wuji, was killed by Wuji. Returned to the revival point. Seeing Wuji die, Rat anxiously gave orders to the others. At the same time, Rat sent a message to the 1,000 Wave Temple players lying in ambush at the revival point. Stand guard, don't let Chuanjin's people gather together. Chuanjin's people had lost Wuji and Chun Xiang, so they had no one to give them advice. The same went for the 12 stars. Without the rats, the people of the 12 constellations were no different from the Quanjin sect. Now that Wuji had self-destructed his resurrection point, all the arrangements that Rat had made just now were useless. If the people from the Quanjin sect were trapped in their respective resurrection points in time, everything would be fine. But if they gathered together and formed a team, even if the people from the 12 constellations were present, the women from the 1,000 Wave Temple wouldn't be able to stop them. Luckily, the 1,000 Wave Temple players weren't very strong, but they were very disciplined. When Mingdu was killed, the 1,000 Wave Temple players had already surrounded the revival points. Now that they received Rat's orders, they had already surrounded the revival points. Rat knew how strong Chuanjin was. So, not only was the ground filled with people, even the roofs were filled with 1,000 Wave Temple players. From afar, the roofs and floors were covered in green. It was a spectacular sight, being surrounded by so many people. Even if Chuanjin's people could fly, they would still be shot down from the sky. In reality, if they had a team, it wouldn't be hard for Chuanjin's people to break out of the encirclement of a few hundred people. But now, everyone was surrounded at their revival points. There was no lack of 12 stars experts among them. So, apart from Baiming Yuyu, who had the Earth Escape skill, everyone else was completely surrounded. Seeing the formation of the 1,000-wave hall, Wuji smiled faintly and said, Oh, this rat is quite thorough. He actually left a backup plan here. Then what do we do now? Should we call for help from Blood Alliance? At that time, the others saw 1,000-wave hall being surrounded and asked in the channel. No. Wuji waved his hand and said, The moment Blood Alliance's people arrive, things will get out of hand. For such a small matter, we'll just call the local snake. The Blood Alliance was Yu Huiqing's guild. If Yu Huiqing's guild came to another city to kill people, it would be considered an invasion. Initiating a city war would be a matter of minutes. Currently, Wang Yu's whereabouts were unknown, and Sarate had an NPC city lord. If a fight broke out, Yu Huiqing's men would definitely suffer. It didn't matter if he was at a disadvantage, but it wasn't easy to return a favor. Tens of thousands of Blood Alliance members had died for him. If he didn't do something, wouldn't he look bad? After all, other than blood-red war flag, Chuanjin and the rest of the Blood Alliance were not close friends. Moreover, even if Yu Huicheng won, so what? Although Yu Huicheng had gained independence, in the eyes of others, Yu Huicheng was still the main city of the Light faction. If a faction war broke out, Yu Huicheng would be in trouble. Local snake? Chun Xiang rubbed his chin and said, "The biggest guild in Sarate seems to be the secret pavilion. Are we going to spend money to ask them for help?" The secret pavilion. Wuji thought about it and said, "That kid rat is really smart. Since he knows that we have to start with Old Cow and us to deal with Chuanjin, then he must have calculated our current situation. Sarate's guild can't be relied on. Then who should we look for?" Chun Xiang was confused. "The most reliable one." Wuji laughed. "Could it be?" Chun Xiang was startled when he heard Wuji's words. "That's right," Wuji said calmly. "To move unhindered. If Big Cow wasn't here, then they would look for Air Cow. To move unhindered would definitely not be bribed by the whole of Wind Cloud with the relationship between Wang Yu and evildoers run wild. Even Rat probably didn't expect that Wang Yu had a backup. Even Blood Brothers had to settle their accounts clearly. Even if the Quanjin sect asked the monster Hung Xing for help, they still had to pay him. But in any case, it didn't matter who earned the gold coins. After all, the goodies should be kept within the family. Besides, with unhindered the world around, the whole world of Wind Cloud would definitely not be able to withstand a single blow. When the time came, with the Quanjin sect's temperament, it would naturally be the wool that grew on the sheep's back. Just as Wuji was about to contact the evildoer rampage, Rat brought along a man and a woman and charged into the witch doctor's resurrection point. Wuji and Chun Xiang knew the man. He was Rat's boss, the whole of Wind Cloud. As for the Devil King mushroom that was short and chubby like a child, the two of them were unfamiliar with it. "Oof. Boss Wuji, we meet again." Seeing that Wuji did not run away, Rat heaved a sigh of relief. He looked at Wuji provocatively and continued to ask, "Looking at the situation now, who is more skilled?" Wuji was speechless. Damn, this rat was really paranoid. He came all the way here and was still thinking about who was stronger. "What do you think?" Wuji asked calmly. "Hee hee." Rat laughed coldly. "Then we'll have to see if you can get out of this revival point." "Obviously, I can't." Wuji shook his head and replied. Now that Rat was back, the strength of the 12 constellations was once again on par with Chuanjin. Even if Wuji and the others could escape from the revival point, what would be the point? Rat and the others were already quite difficult to deal with. Moreover, they had a bunch of teammates from the Thousand Wave Temple. Even if they escaped, they would only be killed. Of course, this was under the premise that Chuanjin did not call for help. To move unhindered. Huh. Rat laughed and showed a satisfied expression when he heard Wuji's reply. At this moment, the whole of Wind Cloud sneered. "You bunch of trash. Listen up. Don't say that I didn't give you a chance. As long as you return my equipment and the money to buy the Castellan seal, it'll be fine. If you don't return it, don't even think about getting out." "Oh." Wuji raised his eyebrows and asked, "Will you let us go if we return the equipment to you?" Wuji knew the whole of Wind Cloud's temper very well. Returning the equipment to him would only make him more fearful of Wuji. Seeing that Wuji had seen through his thoughts, the whole of Wind Cloud's face darkened, and he did not reply. Immediately after, Wuji said, "Boss Wind Cloud, we, Chuanjin, have already shown mercy on you previously. How dare you stir up trouble again? Aren't you afraid of Chuanjin's revenge?" Hee hee. At this moment, the Devil King mushroom, who was beside the whole of Wind Cloud, said disdainfully, "You still dare to be so stubborn when you're about to die? Revenge? Now that you're surrounded by the Thousand Wave Temple, you're about to be killed. What gives you the guts to talk to us about revenge?" "We have Iron Ox." Wuji still had a calm smile on his face. Chapter 1170. Hearing Devil Fungus words, Wuji smiled and said, "Do you think I'll need to crack?" Just as Wuji was about to say something along the lines of using a butcher's knife to kill a chicken, a strange sound interrupted Wuji's words. At the same time, the sky above the resurrection point was suddenly torn open with lightning. Following that, 4 figures were thrown down by a golden claw. F*CKU. Along with a familiar roar, the 4 of them landed on the ground with their butts facing the ground. They landed heavily in between Wuji and Heavenly Cloud's group. These 4 were, of course, Wang Yu's group that Dales had sent back. However, Dales hated Wang Yu for ordering him around, but he could not kill Wang Yu. Therefore, when he sent Wang Yu back, he used a little more strength in his claw. Originally, with Wang Yu's skills, he could easily land at this height. However, after being thrown by Dales, he fell on his back and was in a sorry state. Seeing that there were so many people around, Wang Yu, who was in a sorry state, quickly jumped up from the ground and awkwardly raised his head to look at the gradually shrinking spatial crack. He cursed, "This bastard, how dare he throw me?" Seeing the sudden appearance of Wang Yu's group, Wuji and the world of Wind Cloud were stunned. Naturally, Wuji and Chunxiang were pleasantly surprised. It felt like an author who often stopped updating his chapters suddenly updated 3 times. Everyone knew this. Wuji casually closed the chat window, with evildoers run wild. Since Wang Yu was here, there was no need to spend money to hire him. On the other hand, the whole of Wind Cloud and Mouse were not in a good mood. Wang Yu's existence was like a nightmare to the whole of Wind Cloud and the others. They had finally managed to send this troublemaker away, but who would have thought that he would appear again? That feeling was like an author suddenly saying that he had drunk too much and wanted to stop updating after waiting for a whole day. Everyone understood this. That feeling of falling short of success at the last moment made one feel like King Dog. If they advanced, they would definitely lose. If they retreated, they would be unwilling. For a moment, the 2 of them were completely a loss as to what to do. After the pleasant surprise, Wuji asked in surprise, "Hero Nyo, where did you come from and where are you going?" When Wang Yu heard that, he lowered his head and saw Wuji and Chunxiang. Without hesitation, he replied, "I'm from the Eastern Lands." F*CK, what nonsense is this? Aren't I returning to Salat City? Why are you back in Yuhuicheng? Obviously, this is Salat City, replied Wuji as he pointed at the surrounding buildings. The architectural style of the Dark Faction was very different from that of Yuhuicheng. Wang Yu looked to his left and right. After confirming that Wuji did not lie to him, he asked in confusion, "What are you guys doing here? Do you think we wanted to come? Aren't we being blocked?" As he spoke, Wuji pointed at the 1,000-wave temple players around the resurrection point. Blocked again? When Wang Yu heard that, he looked around without any surprise. When he saw the whole of Wind Cloud, Mouse, and the 1,000-wave temple players, he mocked, "If I'm not here, how can these people block your way?" The whole of Wind Cloud and Mouse lowered their heads speechlessly. What do you know? Wuji, who was looked down upon by Wang Yu, blushed and said angrily, "If you didn't come, I would have wiped out this bunch of trash. Do you know that? Is that so? Then continue. I'm going to find someone to take revenge." As he spoke, Wang Yu turned around and was about to leave. At this moment, the Demon King Fungus, who was ignored by Wang Yu and Wuji, shouted angrily from behind Wang Yu, "Stop right there." Huh? Hearing the Demon King Fungus words, Wang Yu immediately lowered his head and saw the Demon King Fungus beside his thigh. When Wang Yu saw the Demon King Fungus appearance, he could not help but say excitedly, "I can wear out iron shoes in fruitless search, only to find it by chance. So you're here. Saves me the trouble of looking for you everywhere." The Demon King Fungus was a member of the Dark Faction. Although he was Yu Huicheng's neighbor, he had only heard about Wang Yu's fearsomeness from the whole of Wind Cloud. As the younger sister of the whole of Wind Cloud, when her brother told the Demon King Fungus how powerful Wang Yu was, the Demon King Fungus had subconsciously treated Wang Yu as someone else's child. She was not afraid of him, but more of a conflict. In particular, the Demon King Fungus despised the fact that the rat had gone through so much trouble to lock up Wang Yu. Now that she saw that a mere person like Wang Yu dared to boast like that, she was naturally dissatisfied. She glanced sideways at Wang Yu and said disdainfully, "Just you? Why don't you take a look at where you are? You think you can come and go as you please?" "That's right." Wang Yu spread his hands and said matter-of-factly, I can come and go as I please in this place. I. Just as the Demon King Fungus was about to say something, the whole of Windcloud quickly grabbed the Demon King Fungus and said softly, "Fourth sister, don't provoke him." Trash scram. The Demon King Fungus shook off the whole of Windcloud's hand and said, "I've already provoked him. So what? Hold on then. I'll retreat first." The whole of Windcloud said as he dragged the rat out of the resurrection point. However, the two of them had only taken a few steps when they turned around and ran back in a sorry state. Seeing the appearance of the two of them, Wuji raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "Why are you guys back?" The secret observer, who had been silent all this time, smiled and said, "Because the secret pavilion has surrounded this street. You." The Demon King Fungus's expression changed when he heard this. He quickly turned around and looked out of the resurrection point. He saw that the street was filled with the secret pavilion's players, and they were fighting with the Thousand Wave Temple's players. The secret pavilion was a major guild, and the strange-looking ladies from Thousand Wave Temple were naturally no match for them. In just a few moments, the Thousand Wave Temple's players were all sent back to the resurrection point. Seeing his subordinates being slaughtered by the secret pavilion, the Demon King Fungus pointed at the secret observer and shouted, "What do you mean, secret observer?" The secret observer sneered and said, "Exactly what you think I mean." The Demon King Fungus pointed at Wang Yu and said, "This is between me and him. Can we talk about our matter another day?" "I'm sorry." The secret observer waved his hand and said, "Niu Ji's matter is my matter. Niu Ge, how do you think this matter should be resolved?" The secret observer turned to Wang Yu and asked for Wang Yu's opinion. "I don't care. You can ask Wuji." Wang Yu transferred the ball to Wuji. At the end of the day, the only thing the Demon King Fungus did was lock up Wang Yu in the challenge dungeon. Although the Demon King Fungus threw Wang Yu into the challenge dungeon, it was purely a good deed. The challenge token was an extremely valuable item, and the average person could not afford it. Since Wang Yu had used such a valuable item for free, how could he have the nerve to seek revenge? Moreover, Wang Yu did not like to bully women and children. Since the Demon King Fungus was a woman and a child, it was only natural that her words were a bit arrogant. There were plenty of arrogant players in the game, and if he were to teach others a lesson just because they said something arrogant, wouldn't that make him even more arrogant? Chapter 1171. Wuji heard this and smiled. He slowly walked in front of the rat and asked, "Which one of us is better this time?" "Oomph." Rat snorted. "Man proposes, God disposes." Evidently, Rat was still rather dissatisfied with Wuji. After all, in Rat's heart, his plan was flawless, and there was not a single flaw. If it wasn't for Wang Yu escaping from the instance dungeon so quickly, how could Chuanjin's men counterattack? "Huh." Wuji laughed and said, "Don't be unconvinced. If Old Cow didn't come, you guys would have died a worse death. Moreover, your so-called perfect plan actually has a huge loophole." Wuji was right. Evildoers Run Wild's character was much more brutal than Wang Yu's. Just the whole of Windcloud's men's actions, Wang Yu would at most teach them a lesson. If it was Evildoers Run Wild, he wouldn't kill them all. In any case, the whole of Windcloud would definitely not have a good time in the future. Of course, Rat was also a very conceited person. Others could insult his strength, but absolutely could not insult his intelligence. Hearing Wuji say that there was a loophole in his plan, Rat's face immediately changed, and he said, "Impossible. You're talking nonsense." "Nonsense?" Wuji smiled coldly and reminded, "Do you think you can kill us in the safe zone, or can you lock up Old Cow forever?" This, before Rat could refute, Wuji's words made him speechless. Now that Xuanjin's men were in the safe zone, no matter how many men from the whole of Windcloud there were, it was impossible for them to touch a hair of Xuanjin. Moreover, Rat was well aware of Wang Yu's strength. The so-called challenge dungeon naturally couldn't lock up Wang Yu forever. If Xuanjin's men really hid at the resurrection point until Wang Yu returned, Rat's so-called luring the tiger away from the mountain would become a trap. With the moral integrity of Xuanjin's men, it wasn't impossible for them to stay at the resurrection point for a few days. Enough. Seeing that Rat was silent, Wuji waved his hand and looked at the whole of Windcloud. It wasn't easy for you guys to come all this way. Xuanjin has always been magnanimous and doesn't like to make things difficult for others. Boss Windcloud, tell me, how do you think we should compensate you? This, Wuji threw the ball back to him, and the whole of the world of Windcloud was in a dilemma. Of course, whole of Windcloud wanted the Quanjin sect to compensate them with money and equipment before kowtowing and admitting their mistake. However, judging from the current situation, it was possible for the Quanjin sect to do the opposite. But if that was the case, whole of Windcloud would feel that they had suffered a loss. Although Wuji said that he did not want to make things difficult for the whole of Windcloud, he wanted the whole of Windcloud to ask for compensation. After thinking for a moment, the whole of Windcloud replied weakly, "Why don't we compensate?" Compensating was in line with the whole of Windcloud's temperament. After all, this guy had nothing but money. "Are you talking about gold?" Wuji asked. "Yes." The whole of Windcloud nodded. "Boss Wuji, you should be straightforward too. Just give me a number." "Oomph." Wuji laughed. "Do you think we look like people who lack gold coins?" "Air." The whole of Windcloud was speechless again. In terms of gold reserves, Xuanjin's men definitely wouldn't lose to any of the major guilds in the game. Now that they had a pile of gold in their hands, they were worried that they wouldn't be able to sell it. Why would they want gold from others? "You guys can't think of robbing me again, right?" The whole of Windcloud asked with lingering fear. "Don't say that." Wuji smiled and said, "Our Xuanjin sect doesn't lack gold coins. We don't want any equipment either. Let's just let this matter pass. In the future, our two sects will reconcile. What do you think?" "What?" Not only was the whole of Windcloud shocked, even Wang Yu was shocked. He quickly pressed his hand on Wuji's forehead and asked in surprise, "You don't have a fever? Did you get kicked by a cow?" Wang Yu knew what kind of person Wuji was. This guy would rather die than be at a disadvantage. Usually, he would find trouble with others. Now that he was being chased by others in the revival point, he said that he would just let it go. If anyone said that there was nothing wrong with Wuji's brain, Wang Yu would be the first to disagree. The whole of Windcloud was so scared that he trembled. "Boss Wuji, I won't do it again. Just tell me what you want. As long as you want it, as long as I have it, we don't need to scare people like this." Sigh. Wuji pushed away Wang Yu's claws and said gloomily, "You guys are making me feel awkward. We, Xuanjin, have always treated people with sincerity. Boss Windcloud, are you saying that we don't deserve to be friends with you?" "We don't dare." The whole of Windcloud waved his hands. It was unknown whether he was afraid of offending Wuji or he was afraid of being friends with Xuanjin. "That's it then," Wuji said calmly. "In the future, we will no longer be enemies. If Boss Windcloud is out of gold, you can come and buy it from us. What do you think?" Hearing Wuji's words, the others finally reacted. Meow Wuji, that brat, was actually waiting here. As the players' levels got higher, gold became easier to obtain and the price of gold fell. In just a month, the exchange rate between gold and RMB had fallen from 150 to 140. If this trend continued, it wouldn't take long for the exchange rate to fall to 110. This was the instability of the value of virtual currency. Otherwise, the game would become a money-printing machine. To the Xuanjin sect, who had large gold reserves, there was nothing more tragic than this. There were too many gold coins that they couldn't sell, and the gold coins in their hands were becoming less and less valuable by the day. That kind of feeling was like a stock investor who was helplessly watching the stock market go green. They were so anxious that they wanted to jump off a building. Although it was easy for Xuanjin to earn gold coins, it didn't grow on trees. At this moment, the people of Xuanjin were feeling the pinch of the gold coins in their hands. No matter how many in-game coins there were, they were all virtual. They would only feel at ease if they were exchanged for real money. To preserve their value, the best way was to find a rich person to exchange the gold coins for RMB. Obviously, the whole of Windcloud was one of the people who had the ability to use so many gold coins. It had to be said that Wuji's thinking was much more advanced than the average person's. On the surface, Wuji did not pursue the matter of being hunted down by the whole of Windcloud. However, he was actually trying to tell the whole of Windcloud that he would do him a favor. In the future, he would have to buy gold coins from the Quanjin sect. Otherwise, the whole of Windcloud could use this matter at any time. Wuji was a cunning man who did not show his face when he tried to coerce and bribe. After seeing through Wuji's intentions, the whole of Windcloud was relieved. He hurriedly said, "No problem. No problem at all." The whole of Windcloud was no fool. The price of gold coins in Xuanjin was not higher than the market price. Moreover, there was a large quantity and they could trade face-to-face, saving a lot of processing fees. Chapter 1172. Since Wuji had made this request, he knew that whole of Windcloud would agree to it. After all, not only would he not have to pay any compensation, but he would also have a supply of gold coins. It was definitely a win-win situation. Therefore, Wuji was not surprised by whole of Windcloud's reply. He turned to Wang Yu and pleaded, "Boss Windcloud will be our friend from now on. Why don't you let the brothers retreat?" "I don't care." Wang Yu spread his hands and said a secret insight. "Do as he says." Since Wang Yu had spoken, Secret Insight naturally would not disobey. After giving the order to retreat in the guild channel, the players from Secret Pavilion dispersed. Boss Wuji, Oxgod, thank you. Whole of Windcloud was completely relieved after the players surrounding the revival point left. He cupped his hands to show his gratitude to Wang Yu and Wuji. Wuji waved his hand and said, "It's what I should do. If there's nothing else, we'll be heading back." With that, Wuji sent a message to the others in Xuanjin and was about to leave with Wang Yu and Chun Xiang. However, at this time, Devil King Fungus came up to Wang Yu and said, "Hey, did I say you could leave?" "What? Do I need to tell you whether I want to leave or not?" Wang Yu turned around and said, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. This last was too full of herself. Devil King Fungus said recklessly, "My brothers are afraid of you, but I'm not. If you want to leave, you'll have to go through me." "Oh, how?" Wang Yu asked in bewilderment. Devil King Fungus placed her hands on her hips and said, "Defeat me." Wang Yu nodded. "What do you mean by him?" Devil King Fungus stared. "Defeat you? And who?" Wang Yu asked again. "Myself." Devil King Fungus was enraged. "Damn, I've seen people who look down on others, but I've never seen someone who looks down on others to such an extent. What do you mean by who? Do you really think you're invincible?" Tisk, TSK, TSK, so young. Hearing the Devil King Fungus's words, everyone present revealed a regretful expression. There were many ways to seek death. Why did he have to be beaten to death? In the end, Windcloud World was still the elder brother. He immediately pulled the Devil King Fungus and said, "Fourth sister, you can't beat him. Don't speak." Demon Queen Mushroom rolled her eyes at Feng Tian and pointed at Wang Yu in front of everyone. "If I can't beat you, I'll acknowledge you as my master on the spot. If you lose, you'll have to acknowledge me as your master." "Oh, please." Wang Yu could not be bothered to argue with this little brat. He casually replied and pointed outside the resurrection point, then left the resurrection point on his own. 2 seconds later, the screams of Devil King Fungus came from outside the resurrection point. Then, Devil King Fungus shouted excitedly, "Master, please accept this disciple's worship." "Hey, Master, don't go." "Master, you even dare to scheme against the old cow. You're really something." Wuji sighed and pointed at Rat, who was snickering at the side, then chased after him. 10 minutes later, the Xuanjin people and Wang Yu met outside Salat City. Wang Yu sneakily looked behind the Xuanjin people and asked, "That brat didn't chase after us, right?" "No. He was dragged back by Windcloud World." Everyone laughed and asked, "Windcloud World is so rich. His sister must be a little rich too. It'd be great to have such a disciple. Why did you run? What do you know?" Wang Yu rolled his eyes at everyone and pointed at Wuji. "It's all your fault. You're greedy. Otherwise, why would that little thing bother me?" Wuji chuckled. "Actually, it's mainly because the people from the 12 constellations are quite powerful." "Not bad, not bad. They're very powerful." The others echoed. "Oh, Are you guys appreciating each other? Wang Yu asked suspiciously. These people dared not trick anyone. Wang Yu did not believe that Wu Ji chose to make peace with Wind Cloud World because the people from the 12 constellations were skilled. Wu Ji held his forehead and sighed. There's still half a month before the Pro League starts. We're not afraid of thieves, but we're afraid of thieves thinking about us. After hearing Wu Ji's words, Wang Yu suddenly understood. Indeed, there were many players who were stronger than the 12 constellations in the game, but most of them were professional players. Of course, they did not have the time to stoop to Chuanjin's level. As for the 12 constellations, they definitely had the time and energy to chase after and harass Chuanjin. Chuanjin had been harassing others for years, so he naturally knew how painful it was to be harassed. If they could stop Chuanjin at the revival point today, who knew where they would be hiding tomorrow? With the Pro League around the corner, everyone did not have enough time to improve their strength. Who would be in the mood to play hide-and-seek with the unemployed rich people from the 12 constellations? They might as well make peace and earn money. Anyway, there was nothing to lose. The best way to deal with these people who were like sticky candy was to rope them in as friends. This was the highest level of human relations. That's right, old cow. Where do they take you? At this moment, everyone suddenly remembered that Wang Yu seemed to have disappeared for a period of time because of the 12 constellations. Don't mention it, Wang Yu said gloomily. That brat used a special item to teleport me to the evil dragon's lair. Evil dragon's lair? As veteran players, Chuanjin and the others must have heard of the saying, there is no return. Hearing Wang Yu's words, everyone was shocked. Dominic's evil dragon's lair? Yes. Wang Yu said with lingering fear. Dominic is a level 150 boss. Fortunately, I have Dale's summoning token. Otherwise, I would still be in there. TSK, Tisk. After learning that Wang Yu had been rescued by Dale's, everyone was envious. Why do you always get lucky? You must have gained a lot from this trip, right? Huh, of course. Speaking of gains, Wang Yu excitedly displayed the items he had obtained from the dungeon one by one. Seeing the item in Wang Yu's hands, the people from the Chuanjin sect who had seen the world couldn't help but drool. Summoning Undead and Undead Blast were fine. They had seen items of this level many times, so they did not think much of it. However, the attributes of the life and death ring immediately attracted everyone's attention. Everyone stared at the ring and asked Wang Yu, Are you selling it? Are you selling it? I only want one ring for the price of two. I'll give it to you. If one were to say that these people were ghosts, with Wang Yu's current skills, there was really no one who could beat him. One was on Wang Yu's body, and the other was with him. Wasn't this the same as activating an infinite rebirth cheat? Hee hee. Wang Yu chuckled and put the ring back in his bag, answering everyone's questions with his actions. F***CK. Seeing that Wang Yu was not selling, everyone said angrily, Why are you taking it out if you're not selling it? To make you jealous. Wang Yu smirked. Despicable cow. Everyone gave him the middle finger. Gagaga. Look at this. Chapter 1173. The staff was shining with golden light, and there was a skull at the top. There were 3 large gems embedded on the skull. It was the grip of darkness that Wang Yu had obtained from Tyran. The grip of darkness was made of gold and gems, and looked extremely luxurious. Such an arrogant design immediately attracted everyone's attention. Hee hee. Wang Yu chuckled and displayed the grip of darkness attributes. This is an epic equipment? Everyone was shocked when they saw the attributes of the grip of darkness. Then, they turned to look at Chun Xiang and said gloomily, F***CK? Casting pearls before swine. It was not that they had never seen an epic equipment before, but it was the first time they had seen a weapon that was so picky. No, it should be said that it was picky. Although it was a warlock's godly equipment, that was only for Chun Xiang, a warlock who could summon. Even if other warlocks got their hands on this thing, they would probably only be able to use it as a fire stick. It could be said without any responsibility that this staff was tailor-made for Chun Xiang. After all, Chun Xiang's worn-out staff was brought from the novice village. Who would have thought that Chun Xiang had never changed his weapon since he started playing the game, and his last weapon with a godly equipment? For a moment, everyone was envious. To place one's pride hugged Wang Yu's thigh and begged, "Uncle Nyo, don't be so biased. I also want a custom-made godly equipment. Get a godly equipment for Chun Go. Then he will have more reasons to bully me in the future." That's right, that's right. My staff is a dark gold. Mingdu looked at the glowing staff in his hand with a wronged expression. Unwilling to be outdone, Bao San and Yin Lauer shouted, Me too, me too." Wang Yu was speechless. What the hell are these people doing? It's fine if others are envious, but to place one's pride, Bao San and Yin Lauer all have genuine epic equipment. After Mingdu's dark gold staff was buffed with various attributes, its attributes were even more arrogant than a F** King epic equipment. What the hell are these bastards doing? However, what puzzled Wang Yu was that Chun Xiang, who should have been extremely excited, was not as overjoyed as everyone expected. Instead, his face was pale and hesitant, and he looked like he was about to cry. Wang Yu thought that Chun Xiang was so touched that he couldn't express it in words, so he immediately felt a little embarrassed. He put away the proud smile on his face and walked over to Chun Xiang, handing the staff to him, and said, "Brother Chun, don't be too touched. Just do it casually, there's no need to cry." "Move my ass." Chun Xiang rolled his eyes gloomily when he heard Wang Yu's words. He extended his hand and said, "Give me the 2 skill books. You should put this staff up for auction." "What?" Seeing that Chun Xiang didn't want the staff, everyone was stunned. Then they asked in confusion, "No way, Brother Chun. This thing suits you so well. Why don't you want it?" Mingdu also laughed at the side and said, "Brother Chun, did Sister Chun not give you any pocket money again? Don't worry, we brothers will help you. If you really can't, you can pay in installments. Right, old cow?" "That's right." Wang Yu also scratched his head and said, "I'm not in a hurry to use money right now. Brother Chun, you can just take it." "No, no, no." Chun Xiang looked at the staff in Wang Yu's hand with a conflicted expression, then waved his hand and said, "I appreciate Brother Nyo and everyone's good intentions, but this staff really doesn't suit me." "Doesn't suit?" Everyone was even more confused. Even an idiot could see that this staff was tailor-made for Chun Xiang. Even if it was trash, it was still better than the staff in Chun Xiang's hand. Why didn't it suit him? "Yes." Chun Xiang nodded. He took out his shoddy staff gloomily and opened the attributes display. Summoner's Vine Staff, Bronze, Attack, 10-15 mana, 20-25 plus 10 Vitality plus 10 Spirit Summon Demon, LV2, Assimilation Mutation active skill. Summons 6 powerful demons to assist in battle. The demons have 100% of the summoner's attributes. Skill level can be raised to LV3. Book of Seals, for every level up of the summon target, their attributes will increase by 1%. The level of the summon target cannot be higher than the summoner. The summon target's level will be reset upon death. Level requirement, 20 class requirement, Warlock item description, a seemingly ordinary vine staff, but it has a mysterious power. F***CK. When the attributes of Chun Xiang's staff were displayed, everyone spat out a mouthful of blood. Vine staff? Isn't that a weapon that comes with magic-type classes? Chun Xiang's staff was just a prefix. Looking at Chun Xiang's staff, Wang Yu asked in disbelief, "That summoning skill of yours comes with a weapon, yes?" Chun Xiang sighed and said, "This is the reward of the Novice Village's hidden quest. I used a skill stone to level it up once, and then used a skill book to assimilate it once. That's how it rose to LV20. It used to be a level 1 staff." "All right," Wang Yu said helplessly. "The system really knows how to play with people. Wasn't that right?" The Warlock's strongest class skill was actually a skill that came with a novice weapon. This was something that no one could have imagined. If Chun Xiang equipped Grasp of Darkness, it meant that he had given up on summoning skills. Without summoning skills, Grasp of Darkness's attributes couldn't be displayed. No wonder Chun Xiang was so conflicted. This was a choice that would cause anyone to collapse. But thinking about it, it wasn't wrong. Chun Xiang's Summon Demon was only level 2, yet it already had such power. Not to mention that the highest level of this skill was level 3, and it could assimilate all summoning skills. Furthermore, with the support of a special equipment like the Book of Seals, it was truly a bug in its peak state. Attaching it to a new staff would limit the power of this skill. Then what should we do? If we sell this thing, it probably won't fetch a good price. Wang Yu sized up the grasp of darkness in his hands, feeling incomparably conflicted. If he sold it cheaply, no matter what, it was still an epic weapon. If he sold it for a high price, there were already very few warlocks, and this thing wasn't very useful to ordinary warlocks. It would be a waste to sell it. This was the legendary chicken ribs. Just as Wang Yu was at a loss as to what to do with this staff, Wu Ji suddenly asked Chun Xiang. The staff you use only has this one skill, right? Chun Xiang nodded and said, the Book of Seals is a special effect for an offhand weapon. Then it's easy. Wu Ji smiled and said, right now, you only need a piece of black crystal. Black crystal? That's right. Why didn't I think of that? Hearing Wu Ji's words, Chun Xiang's eyes lit up. He suddenly slapped his thigh and shouted excitedly as he gave Wu Ji a big hug. Wu Ji pushed Chun Xiang away as he cursed, scram, scram, scram. Old fart. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.